to deal with facts, let's deal with the facts. Because that's what mostly our people are missing, facts, whether culturally, by law, or historical. And we already know in the areas they've been tampered with. However, if you keep digging, you start getting down to the aggregate.
And one of the points that you had, in our conversation, you were talking about etymology.
Yes.
And the importance of understanding the history of words, and I was just wondering, like how do you define etymology?
Etymology, let's first go with the etymon. So the etymon is to language.
How do you spell etymon, bro?
Etymon. E-T-Y-M-O-N. Etymon is principally the root key to all language, which means any scholar, any doctor of philosophy, and irregardless of language, etymon is the principle or the root word. It sets the mother, the egg, the ovum, the true spirit, the history, the nature, and the true meaning of words. Etymology is the science that treats of the history, the science, the origin, and the morphology of words. And when we're presenting different disciplines and philosophies, one of the things that has been weak in our communities, and it's not by our own fault, it is by Inquisition operations, is that they deliberately do not teach etymology in schools where we are. This is so that makes us put us behind the 8 ball, or makes us incapable of reading contracts, certain principles of ancient history. For instance, like if we're doing some research as an example, and say you deal with some scripts of a scholar of a certain period, the rule is you go to etymology in order to put things in context, because as things may be accepted connotatively in a later period, would not stand in truth or in law if put in context, if you do the research etymologically. As an example, you know and I know, just like, for instance, very often when we may be in different venues, you will give the family some of our spiritual background or the spirituality within the culture. And some people who don't understand etymological principle, may look at it as not them or alien to what they're believing. 9 times out of 10, they'll be dealing with belief system. You may be dealing with fundamental principles. And they may look at it as a clash and think that you're disagreeing with them or that you're being combative when actually they can't read. For instance, let's keep it very simple. As an example, show you how it works in our community. So if somebody says you're nice, right? That's generally accepted as a compliment.
Right.
Right? But actually nice means foolish. Do you understand? That's what it really means. For instance, God is thrown around all the time in our community, right? And they take it as an ancient principle. And it's usually applied in our conversations, whether we're talking about ancient Hikuta, Kemet, Kibalan, etc., ancient Yucatan, our culture here with the ancient ancient Amexem, and we'd be saying the ancient gods. Yet that is a German word, and it is totally modern, and it comes down from Old High, it's Middle English, and it comes down from old. So this is how you do it. As soon as you put Middle English, then you go to the appendix in any of your quality dictionaries, and then it gives you a date. Then you put the date. Then you put the sequence, and then you take it to its original meaning. Then it comes from Gott, or Gut, which is Old High German, which really means good. But then that's taken from Huda, Kodam, ancient Persic, right, which actually means to call upon, to invoke, and to pour out. As a matter of fact, this is where you get the ritual of libation. It's one of the Trinity principles of Godding. Now, when you throw it at our people who don't know, we're not talking about the priest. Now, the priesthood, imams, rabbis, grand sheikhs, shakuns, all know these principles, that it's really a verb transitive. But for the masses or the followers, it's given as a name of the Supreme Being, which allows the priesthood to maintain the power, and the followers pay the bills, and they think they're worshiping, the Creator, when actually that's what the Creator does. You see? Now, so that's the value of etymology. And so when you're dealing with people, if you're dealing with the average person speaking or just loosely using the word, you don't debate with them because you know their intentions are good. But if you're dealing with someone in rulership or in power, you know that they're playing dogma mind control because it's a guilt trip. Because all high priests know that God is a verb transitive and not a noun. The only ones that don't know it's a noun are the followers and the bill payers. And this is one of the systems of what you call connotative linguistics that is used in our community for control purposes. And so, like you can walk in our communities on any other corner, and you'll find a church, mosque, synagogue, you know, so-called house of God, as they say, right? And all of these guys are usually well-dressed, Lexus or Cadillac out there. They might build them a parish, you know, and all you need to do, they got a lot of promises, but all you need to do is go out and look at the community, and that tells you everything they've been doing to the community. If it's any other business, it would be a failure. But usually when people throw the word God around, they're not questioned. But the deal is all scientists know that it's a verb transitive. And then this is where the power is. Of course, then you would study the spirit law behind it or the philosophies behind it to properly use it. Now, in linguistic or in social engineering, that would be called connotative linguistics. This is where a word is generally accepted amongst masses for a meaning connotative, which is not its original meaning, which is in fact what it does not mean, but yet it is perpetrated for social engineering purposes, and the general masses accepts it for what it is. But what it does make them is impotent when it comes to, you know, real operations in society.
Please give an example.
Another example, like say...
And please give an example as if you were speaking to a second grade.
All right.
Person 6 or 7 years old, in terms of connotative.
Connotative. Yeah, second grader.
Something like that.
Like
6,
say
7, 8 years
second
old.
grader. Oh, there's some bad shoes you got on. Now that would be generally used connotatively as a compliment. But in fact, bad is a negative. That's connotative linguistics.
Is it any way related to slang?
Yes, all slang, and this is important too for us to take, because we're good for that, because we work language. You know, that's part of our culture, working language. As a matter of fact, most languages come from us anyway, when it boils down. But the reason why I'm making the point, and the reason why it's important, is because symboliography is used so heavily against our people today.
How do you spell that?
Symboliography. S-Y-N, let me, so you can have it too.
Because I'm sure the brother's going to
Yes.
scroll that.
Yes. Symboliography. Sim, S-Y-M, just like symbol, and A-E, right? Ography. Now, this is the art and the cunning of crafting documents and words. Like, say, for instance, like, teachers in our community learn this. Lawyers learn this. Philosophers learn this. Persons in government learn this. Persons who govern secret societies learn this. It is important because this helps maintain the caste system. And so symboliography is the art and the cunning of drafting wills, documents, or transliterating literature, etc. Another methodology that runs right along the same line that's played on our people is, say for instance, even when we're talking about the God thing, they'll throw the word God around loosely. Everybody goes on a guilt trip, dig in their pocket and everything, think Jesus got an account at Chase Manhattan, and this is the general concept. Adults and children both, right? The very concept that if someone's presenting to you again, say, well, we're going to have some Bible study, right? This usually takes place in our community too. And then here you come in, so Dr. Hiawatha comes in and he brings a Septuagint and then spoils the party. Because now the priest, you know, wants to shut stuff down, yet the priest knows that you can't teach that Bible without going to the Septuaginta. And then you can't teach the Septuaginta without going to the Book of the Dead. And then you can't teach either that, the Septuagint, the Pentateuch or the Hexateuch or those principal books without going to the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is Kabbalistic alphabet. Some people call it Jewish, and ain't no Jew. Is Yahweh, the Hebrew alphabet, because both of them are built off of that, and they're both Kabbalistic and are not to be taken totally literally. Now, so anyone who has a degree in ecclesiastics, means the priest, all of them know that. But I know and you know. What we're saying right now is not the common knowledge or discussion in our communities, because they take oaths not to reveal that. And so they're living wealthy off our people. Our people are living connotatively, and the denotation, which is the true meaning.
Okay, now, denotative.
Denotative.
What is denotative?
Denotative relates to the etymon. So when you're looking at denotate, look at etymon. So you look at them synonymous. So this is sort of like this. Not unlike if I'm talking to you in honor, brother to brother, right? And you give me your nomen, right?
Nomen being?
Your nomen being, your name, your attribute, right? And so you give me your attribute, and so I say, Kaba Hiawatha, or Hiawatha Kaba, right? Now, and it is an honor. Then I turn around and I write it all in capital letters, which creates a straw upon which I would do spiritless activity. And yet someone who don't know that rule would sit up there, oh yeah, that's me. And they don't even know they've created a jurisdiction. And that is done in language in our communities day
You
after
saying just
day.
because you put your name in capital letters,
Yes.
you created jurisdiction.
You created a foreign jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction being what, brother?
Jurisdiction is the power to act, the power to claim, the power to do. Now that straw, which is called a spiritless straw, man of straw, was created when they closed the Freedmen's Bureau and they artificially set up the 14th Amendment and then classified persons of African Asiatic descent as Negroes, blacks, and coloreds, that take them from the human family, because none of those names attached to any nation. Those are code words used by Dutch masters for colonizing or conquering the Western Hemisphere. So they call us Negroes, blacks, coloreds, Indians, West Indians, Coon, Shine, all of those which are commonly accepted in our communities are connotative linguistics. But connotative linguistics.
Okay, now let me ask you this.
Yes.
The words we look at, etymology, connotative,
Denotative.
etymon.
Etymon.
Now, taking those four concepts, let's look at a word that can emotionally erupt a room. It can emotionally do it, spiritually, it can end up in fistfights.
Yeah.
People have died from it.
Yeah.
There is something that can be uttered
Yeah.
out of the mouth.
Yes.
Let's look at this word and let's look at those other words, etymology of the word, denotative of
Yeah.
the word, connotative of the
Yes.
word. Let's take the word nigger.
Yes.
Let's talk about that word so that the community can understand its etymology, what it connotes, what it denotes.
Denotes.
Where did it come from?
All right. Now, nigger is actually a scientific word. It's a scientific word that applies to the Anthropopithecus species, which is the orangutan, gorilla, and particularly the Negro Yavera Arebo, which is the black chimpanzee monkey. That's scientific. The scientific word also applies to Paleolith, or the Paleolithic man, or the caveman, both of which you can, once you research, you'll see. It is troglodyte nigger. Troglodyte nigger is the Paleolithic man or caveman, and that same scientific name applies to Anthropopithecus, or the species, chimpanzee, etc. Where and likewise, where the naturalist Charles Darwin speaks, but he speaks limitedly concerning the troglodyte nigger as allegedly one of the stepping stones for the evolution of the human family, which is a false premise, because really the evolution or the hybriding of the Negro Yavera Arebo and the original people through experiments in the Yucatan. As a matter of fact, in Patagonia, which later is now called the Argentina area, and also the lower part of the United States of Brazil, and with experiments taking place in the Pyramid of the Sun, the technology taking place in the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico, where the world's largest pyramid was until they tore it down and started building cities. And when you look in, say, an Oxford Dictionary or in any of your older, more expensive dictionaries, most of which are not in our communities, your European will admit, hybrid or hybrida, he says, at best, we English are but hybrids. They know that they're hybrids. And that term is dealing with the Paleolithic man, and the reason why they cannot find that so-called missing link, although they keep on finding these skeletons all over the place and saying, well, whoa, this is Lucy, oh, this is the missing link. The truth of the matter is that is not the missing link, because there is no missing link. The missing link is the experiment that took place in Mexico, in the Great Mixing. This was why it got the term the melting pot, where he was hybrided. Then they took him to Patmos, off the Isle, off of Turkey, from there to the land of Angles. And the land of Angles, when the ancient Asiatics ruled, was called Albion. We called it Albion. That's where we took the albinos. And they do rituals in secret societies where the Moors are on camels running the Europeans across the desert on loincloths. They'll have them in the clan houses or in different Masonic orders, etc. That's a ritual of us taking a hybrid from the south over into the land of Angles, or Albion. And that's what England's ancient name was. So that Paleolithic nigger, that nigger, troglodyte nigger, actually applies to the European, does not apply to us. However, there are similar words, homonym, sort of like Naga, which deals with a chief or shakun, someone in a position, or high priest, but that's not a nigger. And a lot of people will use homonyms or sounds to try to use it from an etymological perspective to trace that, but that's not where it's at. Nigger is the scientific name for the Anthropopithecus, which is the black chimpanzee monkey. And also, Rio Negro, which is the Black River, where the Moors called Rio Negro, where the Amazon near Manaus in the United States of Brazil, where the black waters come through, where the black waters come into that area, and we named that river because of the black waters, because it's totally, it's always churning, but it comes into clear water. And a lot of the, some of the different species that were used in the hybriding experiments, including plants, exotic plants, etc., that were used even when that Roman, which means red man, that hybrid was made, was most of that technology is right here. And so when a lot of people even look at the troglodyte nigger, and they'll be talking in history books, yeah, the troglodyte, caveman was over there and stuff like that. He was first here. He was a hybrid. He just went in the caves, and some of them were kind of mutable. You could civilize some of them you could not, because they'd eat your babies. And this is one of the problems that we've always had with that hybrid, and by people not knowing the real history of the nigger, all the European did was traded places. When he got in power, he just traded places. So now our people think nigger means dark-skinned people, and it doesn't. It means Anthropopithecus. It's exactly what it means. Go on any quality dictionary in any quality library and read, and it'll give you its scientific name right there.
According to your understanding, is it a bad word?
It's not bad at all.
Okay.
It's sort of like when people are afraid to deal with truths, they run from things. And also, like people are scared of the dark.
Right.
When you understand what things are, there's nothing to be afraid of.
It's just understanding. Once you get the understanding of it.
People lack understanding, but that lack of understanding comes from which we all agree to. We will agree that our people are miseducated, and then often when you give them the principles of education, they're rejected because it doesn't fit their beliefs. But most of their beliefs are based in misunderstanding, miscomprehension. And this is back to, me and the doctor was talking about even before, at the other class. Basically, and this is where etymology comes in as important, because what happens in between with social engineering, connotative linguistics are introduced in different communities for social controls. Then they become the realities to these people. Do you understand? Not knowing that certain things are designed to groom, to pocket, or to disconnect. And this is how connotative linguistics is used. And so when you get used to that, people start accepting it as real. Another example of the connotative, not exactly that, but how that works in society. For instance, like, you already know that we're Aboriginal indigenous to this land. We've been here not a couple thousand years, not 10,000 years, hundreds of thousands of years. We ain't brought here from nowhere, no how. We've been coming back and forth here even before the land separated. So that ain't, that old diaspora stuff is modern, contemporary social engineering controls to separate these people mentally from their inherited land. Example, we used to always meditate up at the lakes, right? And those lakes are atomic lakes. They're not natural. They're made atomically.
Which lakes are these, brother?
We're talking about Ontario, Erie, etc., Michigan. All of those are atomic lakes, and they'll always have a mist over them.
So you're talking about the Northern American,
yes, for the
Southern
West.
Canadian.
Yes, to feed the whole Western Hemisphere fresh water, including the Red River, which is also the Nile that they call the Mississippi, was dug. That's not even a natural river. We used it for trade, and we got mounds all on that river, all on up into Canaan land. Now, we had a riot in late 1800s and the early 1900s.
Who are we?
The Ajax.
Asia.
Yeah, the Moors, they called us Indians. Like, I'm Cherokee, but that's Anayamwea. We already know European says that. Or and this is dealing more or less with the confederations to the north, Iqua, which is a confederation. It's not a tribe, it's a confederation of many of our tribes. And then the Algonquians, of which my grandmama was, that's more or less when you get in the Virginia area or Lower Egypt, which is Tennessee and Kentucky area. That's Lower Egypt. This is why you hear Lincoln talking about this is Egypt of the West, because they already know we're one and the same people. And we got stuff here that's older than it is in Giza. And all scholars know that, but they won't admit to that because they keep us separating us from both sides like we're two different people. But those who know the real history know that we're one blood, and that the great super Devere is we took on this side. They'll just tell them the story of Ham and Cush. Exactly, but we're here anciently. Now, when they had the Great Riot, and about, there was actually a series of them. And because we used to always meditate at the Great Lakes, that was referred to as the Niagara movement. And so they murdered a lot of them, because you already know that we don't do anything without dealing with the circle of mothers. So the sons, although we are projective, or what they would say, active, whereas the sisters, or you say passive type mentality, dealing with the forces of nature, but not in the negative sense. There's nothing that we would do, because we're a matriarchal society. There's nothing that we would do without first dealing with the council of the women, the circle of women, and then we would act. All right. Now, when the Romans were operating here through the Inquisition operations, they were murdering us, destroying the culture, etc., forcing us into Christianity, taking our children and putting them in these Christian houses and stuff like that. They had a riot, and it was called the Niagara movement. What they did, Europeans came in, they cut a lot of women's heads off, threw them over the falls, etc., and they call it Nigger Falls, or they say it's Niagara Falls. And then they had infiltration, and then they set up and destroyed that whole culture, but because it was so strong, they maintained it and then renamed it, the Niagara movement, the NAACP, and start calling us colored people, which means in law, artificial persons. And then they assign a couple of Europeans to run it. And even with most of the people that are even, have been paying into these little Negro organizations, think they're helping their people, when actually the charter was designed that they could never own land. But since they don't read, they won't even read the charter. And yet they fund them types of organizations, march and pray and keep hope alive and swear they're making progress. That's connotative linguistics adopted into social engineering. And so most of the people don't even know, if you say the Niagara movement, they don't even know what you're talking about. You say NAACP, they down. And yet it was designed to undermine them. But yet if you tell that truth, many of your own people attack you because they don't read.
When you say social engineering, what is that?
Social engineering is, like, for instance, when you deal with Pope Innocent III with the Spanish Inquisition.
You're dealing basically late 1400s, 1500s.
Yes, and we're even coming off of the secret treaty of Rome of 1213 between John of England, dealing with the popes of Rome when they made that secret agreement. So whatever they conquered in the Maghreb, that they would deliver to the popes. And this is where the Christians get their discovery doctrine, that they operate in the Western Hemisphere, where they just take our land or our Bonnevilles, they'd murder the people, and then they later on, and not until later did they create what is known as deeds. But actually these were estates of a lordly title. And of course you already know that we were noblemen and noblewomen. And if you look at some of your earlier documents in United States history, you'll see us listed as noblewomen and noblemen. However, that term is not used anymore. Not that it's not, it's in books, but it's mostly in rare books where you have to spend thousands of notes for, or that they keep away from the public. And then they start altering the history. So
when you say thousands of notes, you mean money?
Yeah, but there's no money.
Right.
They came here to steal our gold.
Okay, yeah, but for those that are watching this,
yes, let's qualify.
Yeah, they might need to know when you say.
And the reason I'm saying that is because we have to get in the habit of not continuing to perpetrate what we know is falsehood. Because our people are under attack. And we have a lot of brothers and sisters around the country that's been struggling in a lot of different organizations to try to help our people. But if they don't know certain fundamentals of what they're dealing with, it's like coming to a chess game with checkers. You'll usually lose, even though the intention is good. And this is where a lot of times we can get on panels just like we did the other day, and we're all reaching for the same thing, but yet the language will be so disparate, and you'll have a lot of emotion come out, very little remedy, hardly any remedy.
Remedy meaning prescriptions.
Meaning no cures.
Cures.
No cures.
Just discussion of disease.
Yes, complaining about what Rome does to us. And then even on connotative linguistics again, then calling him white man, which means sovereign. And it doesn't apply to him. And as soon as you call him sovereign, you just call him God of the land, then he acts like it, then we call him racist.
How do you define sovereign?
Sovereign is
and sovereignty.
Sovereignty or sovereignty generally is politically accepted around the globe. And this applies to nations or persons that are part of the nations. And outside of that venue, sovereignty generally does not apply. Meaning that me and you, brothers, family, right? I respect your rights as a man, as a brother of the blood, in divine laws of nature. The sovereign right is when we recognize the honor of our mothers and fathers, which means when we honor the truth of our family. That's called natal, or the navel, that you're born a woman, ma and son, mother and son, the principle. That sovereignty is recognized within the national venue. It is not recognized outside the national venue. As an example, if you make it very simple. Say a Chinese brothers in here talking with us, right? And we're having a discussion about our communities. And so most of our people not knowing the truth of bloodline and pedigree, because it's not taught in our community, we'll say, my black uncle and my light-skinned orange aunt and my Negro cousin, and they're talking like that. And it's commonly accepted because they don't know better, right? So a Chinese coming here, and he says he's Chinese, or a brother come here, say from Korea, etc. Another brother comes, say, from Zimbabwe, etc. And they're coming in here, and what we'll do, we'll take those brands and put them on the table of discussion with national names and expect the same respect and effect. Then if them brothers turn away, we'll accuse them of being racist, acting like they're European, when actually what they're trying to signal to us is that we're in dishonor. Do you understand? And so if a Chinese come in here and start talking, well, Doc, I was checking you out, man, and I saw you was going into the culture, man. You was dropping a lot of jewels on us and everything. Well, what do you have to say for the light-skinned yellow boys? Yeah, light-skinned yellow guys. At that time, he just lost his sovereignty. He just lost his birthright.
What did he do that made that happen?
As soon as he said that he's light-skinned yellow guy.
What did he do when he did that?
That he took on connotative linguistics. Now, in real world politics, sovereignty is not recognized.
What
He just
should
gave
it say?
up. Chinese. He says, well, he's a light-skinned yellow guy, and this is dark-skinned yellow girlfriend. Soon as he started using the connotative linguistics, he's accepted, but such persons would be held only in programs. Such persons are not held or recognized within the human family because they themselves, by their own confession, step out of the honor of their mothers and fathers. And that's respected all around the world. So you tell that guy who just said that he's light-skinned, orange-skinned, yellow guy, say, no problem. Go on the Parkway in Philadelphia, or go right here to 49 Nations and stand under your national standard and give me at least the fundamental principles of your Constitution when you step out of your house or your home into another man's land, because he's going to measure you by your constitutional principles. And if you can't say it, jump in the river.
Excuse me for 1 minute, Brother Booker T. Taj, I want to ask you this question. Do you have any questions for Booker T?
Yes, because we was discussing it before we came up here.
Right, beautiful. I want to ask you this question. I'm going to just let y'all go on. Because I hear this all the time.
I know you're going to hear a lot.
When you go into court and you say that I'm not black,
Yeah.
I'm a white person.
Yes. What does it mean?
That's what you're going to go into that.
Yes, what you mean?
When you say that I'm not black, I'm a white person.
Yes.
Why do we assume that, we're playing by their rules?
You're not playing by their rules. You assume that you are.
Okay. We're playing by the white man's rules. Like he's going to respect us.
Yes, you're playing by your rules.
Say that we're not black.
You're playing by your rules.
Go in on it.
All right, now, assumption. Now, this will give you something to work with.
Right.
Recently, which you can do research, a brother from Hikupta, of course, sociologically we call it Egypt, but it's Hikupta, right? He come and he's doing some business, and he wanted to deal with some of the Negro programs, because after all, he's our brother, right? Now, on his passport is white man, right?
Right.
Now, of course, our people don't know that because they can't handle that, because here, remember here the training is, with the people here under European colonial serfism, they think human beings are crayons, so they expect you to come with whatever color you are. They think human beings are colors, because that's the training. They don't know that's connotative social engineering. But that stuff doesn't work in the civilized world. It's just for here. Although you hear those terms outside, that stuff is North American, Dutch colonial, social operations. That's Inquisition operations in the Western Hemisphere. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Now, and you can go punch this in too, brother. Say Egyptian recent court case, tried to claim to be black for some benefit, right? Anyway, he lost the case. Stupid court. He lost the case. He lost the case because it's a status, whereas our people think it is actually colors, because there's a color code system for caste here. It's a caste system. And our people are trained to believe that that's an Afrocentric identity. That's a caste system for 14th Amendment artificial person, for European Christian property, registered in the state of Delaware as Christian property, moved exactly like real estate after they closed the Freedmen's Bureau. It's totally unreal. However, what it does, it takes one out of one's proper person. And in law, when one is not in propria persona sui juris, that means when you're not in your proper person, you have no standing at law. Anybody knows law will tell you that. Well, they won't tell you that because it's not necessarily in their economic interest. If you pressure them, they'll be forced to tell you that. So in order for you, me, we, people, to have standing in law, you must be in propria persona. Now, not only that, if you're capable or if you're competent, it would be sui juris. That means competent and of my own right. And then if you have an inheritance or you're talking about property, this is my stuff, to even have right to claim property, that's sui heritus. So if you're not in your proper person, and then sui juris, you can't even be sui heritus. This is why it's important for identity. So if you look up the word identity in law, it means the same, the exact, same, and rightful, exact and same, that a person, man or woman, claims to be, represents themselves to be, or are charged to be. And the first sentence in identity is proof. Proof. That's the first sentence, and period. After that, it's not even no semicolon. Proof that one is what one claims to be, one's charged to be, and what you represent yourself to be. And as soon as you use a name or a nomen or an attribute that's out of your pedigree bloodline, you're automatically what they would call civil liter mortuus. And that's another legal term that all these civil rights leaders guys knows, because most of them are Masons, or most of them, you understand, been dealing with law or raising finance, paying some so-called European Jew lawyers to always do these Negro cases while they know they're playing with these people, because the status is called civil liter mortuus. You know, and I know, most of our people involved in these civil rights organizations don't know that that's their status. Meaning they're trying to get out of something, don't even know what the status is, because the leader guy ain't telling them, because he's getting kickbacks from the corporation. You understand? Because 9 times out of 10, you got one foot in the back of the church and the other foot in the back of the White House telling the dummies that they're separate when they're actually agents of this order. Now, the deal of it is white and black are legal statuses. And white does not mean Caucasian race. This is why a lot of times we bring the law books in and show the people what everybody knows, except us. Because they keep on clinging to these brands and thinking they're legitimate, not knowing that they were designed for social engineering, connotative linguistics, to take them out of their proper person status. And as a matter of fact, even if you're talking about court, right? If you go into court and arguing a case, and if they, first of all, if you don't even challenge the jurisdiction of the court, because the jurisdiction of the court, there's personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, classification of law, territorial jurisdiction, the land or the political jurisdiction that the person is operating in that's making any determination, i.e. the so-called judge and that so-called prosecutor. And first of all, people don't question that because they never think to question that. Because they don't teach our people that law and history goes together, and they absolutely go together. And our people will get history, but they're not taught that law and history goes together. Therefore, we keep getting in these races limping. You know, often not winning and not knowing, but we're being hindered. So when the people know that black and white are legal statuses, they'll understand why that Egyptian lost the case, because he's a white man. You know, just because he comes amongst the brothers and we all brothers and everything, you only do that with people who really believe that they're niggers, because that's Christian property. But a free man honors his mothers and fathers. That's why you won't see any brother from Africa or Asia come here arguing, talking about crayon colors. They will use their nationality. You know, if they're from Nigeria, they won't even say they're African. They'll say Nigerian. Some Zimbabwe or Ikuta, Egyptian. You understand what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. He's from Lebanon on the north side. So I'm Lebanese. You don't say I'm light-skinned yellow guy. That stuff only goes here.
But I'm saying you're playing by their rules.
You're not playing by their rules.
Power.
Let's back up. Let's back up. Yes, you're playing by some of their rules. One of the mistakes that we make as a people, we keep assuming that jurisprudence is a science of Europeans in the Western Hemisphere. Biggest fraud that ever came down the pipe. The Moors brought jurisprudence to these Europeans in the 12th and 13th century with the Renaissance, bringing them Europeans out of the Dark Ages into the modern world, and that science does linguistics, astrology, cosmogony, cosmology, philosophies, trigonometry, algebra, horticulture, etc. All of that in the 7 liberal arts came from Moors. And that's called the Renaissance. And this is where the Christians get in their church the term to be born again, because that's what Renaissance means. And the Moors brought them Europeans out of the Dark Ages into the modern light, and that knowledge is codified and symbolized and referred to as Ma'at, or Ma, mother, Ma'at, and the son, S-U-N, and S-U-S-O-N, my son. Masonry. Masonry. That's what masonry is. And they all got Korans, and they all got the 4 Vedas, and they all got the Magian law, and they all got the Septuagint, and they all go into the secret houses of Egypt, and you can go to any lodge and they got the wings of Ma'at or carpets that cost more than your house, But they come out, they Christians and Jews and all this old stuff. You want taxes for your feds? You go give one of these Jews. You don't go to the Muslim on the corner because he thinks sure. We just acting just like them daggone Christians, all twisted up in 59 different sects and everything. Don't even know that Islam was here in the Western Hemisphere 50,000 years. It ain't just with Prophet Muhammad. The concept is wrong. But the way the rituals are, people are locked in rituals. And soon as you say those principles, they think it's in East. When you deal with the tongues here, Algonquian tongues, you find some of the same sounds or some of the same root that you call Semitic, although that's a term that's used by German scientists for social engineering that's more modern. And so let's talk about Aramaic, the Persic languages, Aramaic, Hebrew, or what you call Hebrew, etc., Arabic, etc. They're all sister languages, and certain Persic languages. So you'll find some of those same codes right here. You can dig up here and you'll find old statues with fezzes on them. That's older than any government on the planet. You know, but our people are mentally separated because they don't know that we're indigenous to this land. That's because of social engineering. For the social engineering, they needed connotative linguistics to disconnect us, to create what is called disassociation, which is really what we suffer from. This is why when you bring some of the culture, if you bring up some of the philosophies to our people, mentally they're disconnected. They think, oh, man, yeah, oh, that's cool, but, you know, oh, we ain't indigenous here. We're in this. We're not Indians. They just call us Indians, but we're indigenous to this land. You see? And this is the Maghrib El-Aqsa. This is the reason why, as these nations are start burning these embassies all over, that's why Hillary spoke from the Ben Franklin room, and she had the Moorish flag on the right and the Moorish flag on the left.
I saw that.
Oh, yeah, yes. That's to give the world, see, because during the Maghrib, she's a daughter of the American Revolution. You understand? Or anybody in positions of power belong to one of the secret societies. If it's Bush and them, they Skull and Bones, or Blue House Masons, either way, or Knights, they're Malta, Knights Templars, one of the other, they all, and in secret, all of them got a Moorish fez. All of them. Not one, not two, all of them. And the dragon to the Ku Klux Klan got a Koran. That's the truth. And everybody's schooled on the Maghrib El-Aqsa, Morocco, the most extreme west, except the descendants, the heirs, the nobles of the land. That's us. And we run around calling ourselves crayons. And we're the heirs to the world's largest estate. And so when you're discussing these things, we usually attach to whatever the connotative linguistics is of the contemporary times. Meaning, if you take us 20, 30 years later, wouldn't we call ourselves black? We'd be Negroes or colored people. You know, and then Afro-Americans, whichever suits the term. Not knowing that in law, as soon as you step into court, and you use those terms, because they're terms, they're not IDs, they're terms.
What's the difference?
All right.
Between a term and an ID?
All right.
ID being
I apologize. Let me qualify because it'd be better than that. Because your ID, proper ID would be the pedigree, would be your bloodline.
ID meaning identification.
A true identification dispensed or distinguished from like a license, which is a contract that converts rights of movement into crimes of foreign ports and duties. It comes under foreign ports and duties for a foreign entity or some foreign person operating in a land that is not theirs, therefore their customs and duties, and that's what a license is. And so they tell people that a license is ID because the people don't know how to read. And they know they don't know how to read. And then they use it and actually they color themselves. And of course that gives them leave to just deal with you, take your property and everything because it's really theirs, because it's registered in their trust, not yours. That's why they don't teach trust law either. And this is why the Negro leaders won't teach these principles, because it's not easy. I mean, you can't feed emotions. You really got to educate these people to get them out of this situation. And you got to change their language. But that's hard, you know, because these people got a lot of belief systems that these Europeans then put on us over these years, and then our own leadership then secularized these things all up while they maintain the truth in their secret societies, both Europeans and Asiatics. Keep this in mind, not just Europeans and Asiatics. Both playing these people, and both of them been taken to the mountaintop because they know that that's the Great Seal. That's the emblem of the ancient Moabite Moorish nation from all these people in the Western Hemisphere. That's why even when you say you deal with any of the family, when we say in Dominica, Haiti, Boricane, or any of the Taino tribes, or any of the Carib tribes, and you talk to them like blunt, you know, because the Europeans been killing our people, they'll just say, well, we're of African Indian descent, rather than saying that they're Moorish.
What is so great and let me finish the question before you jump on me, all right?
No, go ahead.
What is so great about being a sovereign in America when the pale man don't respect your sovereignty?
Okay, you're right. You're right. You're right. Now, that's the secret treaty of Verona.
Okay.
In other words, don't look at it that because you're right, that therefore he would automatically respect anything. Mm-hmm. It is back to us knowing the connotative linguistics, how it's used, how the support information or misinformation is used for engineering society. Now keep in mind that all over the world, sovereign right goes with nationality. They're not to be separated. Like if I come to you and I start talking sovereignty just like that, it's not that that's not a legitimate subject matter. But from an intellectual position, you would look at me as being a little bit maybe naive, or that I went and copied something down on CBS and read something and then start talking stuff, because you already know that if I really understood sovereignty, I wouldn't be arguing sovereignty. I'd just simply say nationality, because that sets the standard all over the world. You see somebody come before the United Nations, any nation on the planet, they'll come talking sovereignty. They might mention sovereignty or an invasion or an abridgment of sovereignty, but they'll have the nation state before them. I don't care what part, what continent they're from. If they're from Kemet on that side, right? On the east side, you got 54 different nations. It's not Africa. You got 54 different nations. And they'll have their nation state in front of them. You speak outside of that, you speak outside that venue, and don't be talking about some sovereignty because you ain't got it. That's why you have representatives all over the world that represents the nations of the earth. And nations of the earth make international law to protect the international peoples of nations.
So would you say that when Malcolm, in his final years, was going to move on to UN, do you think that he was beginning to
knew he was going in that direction? Because if you pay attention, if anybody pays attention to Malcolm's speeches, from the beginning on up until when he left the nation, right? And include Clarence leaving.
Clarence actually speaking of
Clarence.
Father Allah.
Yes. Okay. Include Clarence leaving, and including later Wallace. All right? Principle's the same.
But please, let's go back to Brother Clarence, so that everyone that's watching this knows exactly who we're talking about.
Right.
Because that's very important. Because his place is still on the corner of 126th.
Yes.
Right on this alley.
Yes.
Who is that? And then let's move to Malcolm's sovereignty, the UN, the nation. Good. And when you say their nation is in front of them, you're talking about that.
Let's so that people don't get emotional, because people have a tendency to get emotional. Let's just deal with principle. This is the principle. What Malcolm found out and what Clarence found out, which is the nature of why they left. Although you'll see misrepresentation talking about the land with the secretaries and stuff like that, kind of like everybody kind of knew that. That's not really what it is. They found out from the FBI papers and also from COINTELPRO operations that the Temple of Islam, which later becomes the Nation of Islam, of which I was a minister in it too, do you understand, is a break off from the Moorish movement. All right? Now,
and the Moorish movement being created by
set up by Noble Drew Ali, right? And also Noble Drew Ali and Marcus Garvey was working together too. So Marcus Garvey taught structure of government, principal structure of government. Noble Drew Ali taught nationality and government and the enforcement of the Constitution. That is the heart of the Moorish movement, the enforcement of the Constitution for the United States of America, which comes from our law. It don't come from no European law. And what happens is a lot of people keep looking at that Constitution and saying, this man's law, that is not his, that is law adopted from us.
You're speaking of the great law of peace.
The law of the great peace. The law of the great peace, from which the Constitution and its character is adopted in order to have harmony on our land for them operating here on our land. And this is how we, as Asiatics of the West, got to start looking at that Constitution. This is back to what I was saying to you, Sanetta. We have to stop saying his stuff. It's not his, can I have some water too? It's not his stuff. Drink it, then give me, it's not his stuff. We keep, that's a mental separation. But anybody knows real history knows that that Constitution comes from our Confederation of the North, Anansi.
Bey and Kaba.
Yes. The law of the Great Peace.
The law of the Great Peace.
Now.
That united the nations.
Yes, it's exactly.
Mohawk, Seneca,
Yes.
Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, too often, because we get frustrated about, with how the European treats us, we keep taking things that are running things now and just saying, that's his stuff. It's not his stuff. He was brought into the constitutional fold of government, and he just overthrew us. This must be comprehended, because what happens, we are suffering from disassociation. This is one of the reasons why when you start giving people the principles of jurisprudence, they say, oh, that's not his stuff. It's your stuff.
But right now they're in power, so it's their stuff.
No, that's not the proper way to look at it.
Well, I would say that concept would be like if someone stole something from you.
Right, I got you.
And then they start saying it's theirs. It is your stuff. Right. They stole it. It's in their possession illegally.
I see what you're saying.
But now, my concept, because I want to come back, because I think it's very important. Because
get back to the Malcolm thing.
I think that's what I'm saying. Because I think that's where we'll understand really the great danger of Malcolm.
This is what
Malcolm, brother, Father Allah, or Clarence.
Yes. Let's look at this like this. Let's keep it simple.
Okay.
Because we don't need to bang it out. Because we already know people are sensitive.
Right.
All right. European French Muslim. As they say, blue-eyed Muslim. European French Muslim schooled him. Just because you made the Hajj, good brother, don't come here with that black and white stuff. Because you made the Hajj, you're not visiting home, you left home.
Explain what you mean by that.
The great Masonic secret, North America, Masonically and cosmologically and in the ancient culture, is referred to as the North Gate. And the North Gate would be described in the, like scientifically, if you're dealing with, say, physics, right? You would be dealing with, you would take the universe and you would make it into quarters. Therefore, this symbol would represent the mundane cross, or the earth cross. The mundane cross. If you're dealing with philosophy, it would be dealing with the mundane cross or the master seal. And you'd have spring, summer, autumn, winter. Also, these are sectionals of the universe. And also, you would deal with this philosophically. We would put our 7 feathers on here. Our 7 feathers. And sometimes we put maybe 3 up here and 4 down here. And then we'd hang this, and this would be called a dream catcher. And you have the 4 gate. But that's the root of the philosophy all over this planet. It also would be represented here if you take it like this, and there'll be swastika, which is the 4 gates, which is the same thing. Absolutely the same thing. The oldest religious symbol on the planet. But it's cosmology. It is cosmogony. And this is where you get the term from the dream catcher. That means the ethereal plane. And then we use the feathers that represent the activation of the pineal gland. Or if you're dealing in the Yucatan or Hikupto on the other side, you simply use the eye of Horus. And that would represent the activation of the pineal gland. And of course, where it activates the thalamus, that's the nerve center that comes out over the crown of the head, of the nose. This is why sometimes we put a dot there, or we go through the ritual, or they say anointed my head with oil, the activation of the chakras, etc. Anointed my head with, this, but it's all the same stuff. And what they do, they divide that stuff up and make people think it's something different. But get this in mind. Ilmalik, that's let me turn my phone off. That's my baby's in. Somebody's, that's Gigi called me.
I press pause. You want to get it?
This is why if you pay close attention to Ilmalik's, the Hajj's later speech, everything he was talking about was nationalism.
Ilmalik is speaking of Malcolm.
Yes. Everything he was talking about is nationalism. And this is why even before they got to Brother Khalid, he started exposing that we're Moors. You know, and this is what they all find out eventually. But the deal of it is, the importance is not that just that it's historical. It is political, meaning that when you walk into them jurisdictions without a free national name, you're automatically what is classified as a ward of the court, or what is called constitutional psychopathic inferiority. Yeah. Constitutional psychopathic inferiority. That's one who does not understand or does not recognize or does not uphold the principles of society or constitutional principles. Persons that are usually classified as Negroes, black, and colored are considered pathologically inferior constitutionally. It means they don't know anything about constitutional principles, about their own law. They don't hold them laws, particularly in their own communities. They kill each other. They do all things that are actually unconstitutional. They claim names that are not theirs. They buy and sell names that are not theirs, then march and pray because they don't own nothing. You know, because you cannot transact business in another nation's name and own property. It ain't going to happen anywhere in the world. And yet they won't render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but they always complain about what Caesar is doing to him. This is us. You know, because we always look at the wrong on one side. You know, like they're doing it, but like we're correct, right? And then we use brands that they create in order to steal the birthright. These are principles that Malcolm found out, that Khalid found out. This is why you see, once they really find, and it's not so much just that they find out that all these leader guys knew this stuff all the time. But they preserve it. This is also why Clarence, Father Allah, this is why he came out and he started giving some of the adab lessons of mathematics, which is really what Islam is.
Supreme mathematics.
Yes, exactly. Now, all the leaders got it. You know, once they get past the problem book, you know, actual facts and everything, they'll talk about the supreme wisdom. The believers don't never get no supreme wisdom. It's always going to be handed to them later, if you get the point. But you already know how sensitive they are because everybody likes to think they've arrived. But the truth is, on all the fronts, our people pretty much been played. By the lead, not just by the Europeans, just by us too. But the fundamental is that they must understand that North America is the North Gate. Another example, let me give you some United States law.
Can I ask you a question while we're here?
Read this while
Malcolm,
have you read that.
Malcolm goes to the UN.
Yes.
He's about to charge the United States with a crime.
Mm-hmm. Genocide.
Had he been able to do that, would he have, because he was permitted to bring forward us as a people, as a nation, being treated a certain way by another, let's say, group of people, would he have created the nation that we're talking about just by doing that?
No, because you can't create what already exists.
But I mean legally speaking.
No, legally speaking, no. This is what happened.
What would he have started to do after that?
Oh,
if Malcolm had lived, and if Malcolm knew what you knew,
they knew where he was going. They knew.
Where was he going?
He was going to nationality.
How would he have, if somebody, let's say, watching this, wants to complete Malcolm's work,
yeah,
what would you recommend they do? If it's not you doing it, but what would they do?
Start communicating with the rest of the civilized world.
As nations or as the world?
No, as a nation. But you need to know your nationality. I mean, the rest of the world already knows. It's not a secret. It's sort of like we have to work out our...
We being?
These Asiatics of the West, right? We've gotten caught up in identifying ourselves by our tribes and our clubs.
Meaning?
Like, say, for instance, if I'm a Sears guy, I'm the black Sears group, and he's the black, light-skinned black Macy's group. And then he's the Nation of Islam, he's the Moorish Science Temple, he's UNIA, he's in Cobra. These are things,
Republican.
yes, these are
Christian.
things that we do. These are vehicles for propagating, say, a position, a political position. But they are not nationalities.
So when Malcolm said they don't attack you because you're Republican or Democrat,
exactly.
Was he trying to bring them around, us around, to focus in on that?
Very bluntly, exactly, because we're emotional and we think that when people start talking like this, that they're attacking our clubs. Because remember, our people identify themselves by their clubs. You know,
Republican, Democrat, Christian, Jewish,
Muslim, Baptist, Methodist, which divides us. Meaning that, like, say for instance, like, give you an example. This brother here is just an example. I just happen to have this. Now, this brother here got IRS was attacking. You know, they going back. You know, they're going back for years and years and trying to come at him relative to some debts, you know, that they claim to owe, right? So now, logically, when they come at them, they're going to come in the straw. That's the 14th Amendment straw that's created.
Straw is, how do you spell it?
The straw, man of straw. Say man of straw.
S-T-R-A-W.
Yeah,
okay.
Just like straw. This is what,
okay.
All right, so let's set the record straight so we'll understand, because this also involves what Il Malik and Clarence found out. But this is out of degree, if you get the point. Now, straw is essentially what those 9 radical Republicans did when they closed the Freedmen's Bureau, which was open roughly around 3.5 years, and they squandered the finance, and they was dealing with the Missouri Compromise and the 3630 parallel.
What year would this be?
This would be between the 60s, 1860 and 68.
66.
In that whole area, from the time they killed Lincoln on up to then, you know, right after they dealt with the Dred Scott case. The Dred Scott case was the most important slave case ever to come before the Supreme Court of the United States, 1857.
Judge Cheney?
Yeah, Cheney, etc.
Okay.
With the status, the original Article of Amendment 13 with its 20 sections, not the one that's dealt with now that you see with just the 2, you know, for how do you say, for the Negro population type thing that they have. We already know the congressional records is 20 sections. They got originally 20. They got 2 in the books now. All right. So when you're dealing with that, then you're on the status, the real status issue. So the 3630 parallel, they would have had to recolonize us between the Rocky Mountains and the Allegheny Mountains, and pretty much all the land would have been given back from under European control, and thus they had to crush this 40 acres and a mule thing because they would have had to give all the land back. But it's because we're indigenous. You understand? And so that's the colonization of Africa. It's not Africa there, it's Africa here. You see, this is the Maghreb. And so they had to crush that because that wasn't paralleling the secret treaty of Verona, because they was burning the history. They're trying to destroy the culture. They weren't trying to wake these people up. Although they was presenting, though some of the politicians were presenting positive legislation, you also had the opposition that wasn't going to let this stuff take back because it had been done.
Treaty of Verona.
The secret treaty of Verona 12, I don't know if I have it.
Give or take, what is the ballpark date on that?
1213. And so now,
where is this being held? And what
you'll find it in the Library of Congress. Library of Congress. Let me see if I have a copy of it here. Now, the Treaty of Verona, they go into Congressional Globe, Congressional Records, Sonata.
Yes, sir.
Congressional Globe. You go for the Treaty of Verona, and you go also for the bankruptcy of the U.S., and that would correlate the information, and you would see the politics that are taking place today that's affecting our people adversely. The other concern is, for the most part, they're not worrying about it because they know the Negro leaders ain't going to teach it because it doesn't fit their Negro club agendas. Not that they don't have this information, understand what I'm saying? See, because if this information's out with the masses, most of these little club organizations would collapse tomorrow. And the people will come together because number one, once you understand, even if you're at a disadvantage, once you know what's used against you, your energies are better directed. Your priorities are better directed, which means you'll be more effective. All right? The Secret Treaty of Verona is the foundation of European colonial operations in the Western Hemisphere coming off of the Spanish Inquisition, which is the Inquisition against the Moors and the Jews, which is essentially these people in the Western Hemisphere that think they're black. If you get, that's the foundation of the politics of the Western Hemisphere and, in fact, the world. And so the Treaty of Verona is the foundation of their social political operations.
They're being
these Europeans that are operating in the Western Hemisphere, that our people, through its activity, are referring loosely as racism.
Would you consider they that were
I
speaking
apologize
of
when I say
the
Europeans
rich,
distinguish.
because when are you talking about the poor, or is it baggage that they are able, like privilege, white privilege, but the people really benefiting from this?
No.
Would you say are the merchants, the European
Yeah, you
merchants?
can call them the merchants of Venice. That's
People
another.
who Romney might be, candidate
Yeah.
Romney is attempting to
Yeah.
represent, would you
Because
say that's
he is. Because
they?
he is.
Okay.
He is. And this is what we have to recognize in North America. The loose term white and black are political terms that actually deal with Europeans, Asiatics, although it's connotatively used, corrected. It's actually Roman, European occupying Maghreb al-Aqsa, Morocco, the most extreme west. And so the code words is the Europeans discovering India. Do you, in other words, these are all codes, but they all mean the same thing. Do you understand? So in the code, they would be white man, we'd be Indians. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. In fact, they're Europeans, we're Moors. You understand? These, we're pulling all the bull away.
Would that return back to connotative?
In other words, it's taking the connotative away and going to the root. Because it is the root where is when you have standing in law.
And that's the denotation.
That's the denotation. It means that we keep digging through the BS to get to the truth. But we've got to get to the truth to have standing before the world. This is sort of like when Ralph Bunche was speaking for the UN, and everybody got up and they said, oh, they racist against the brother. No, because you can't take that black stuff and color stuff and put it on the venue of nations. It's not that the argument is not there. It's just improper venue.
Is it improper venue as it relates to President Obama today?
This is why he's in president, because he's not black. He's not a nationality. Black man can't be president, because black man is a Christian slave. That's the idea. That's how you can tell. What meaning like this? You take me and you, right? Right? Remember we went to Chicago?
I actually didn't roll.
All right, we went exactly. Look, yeah, we went to Chicago. We flew to Chicago. When the first time we went, me and your mother.
Yeah.
Remember? And she told you about it?
Yeah,
when they came from behind the counter and wanted to take pictures with us? When they was taking our badges. Yeah. The Asiatic sisters didn't understand because we had a nationality card. Hey, no ID and all that stuff. And so it was a sister, I think, I don't know what nation, she's Philippine or something like that. She saw us and saw the ID. She came from behind wanting to take pictures. The sisters are looking all like crooked because they thinking Christian, Muslim, that religious mentality, which is really not what this is. Do you understand? So then they took us around. We didn't even go through the record. They took us around so that we can go through all the BS. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. Now, some recognize it, some don't. If you understand, but
some recognize it, some don't. Who is some that do?
Meaning
some
that
don't?
it's, put it this way, in general, because nothing is 100%. People know who we are, generally. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Which is, like, say, for instance, if you look at us as a people, as you will always say and we'll always agree with, distinctly, these Asiatics of the Western Hemisphere are treated distinctly from a lower position than most other people, and we traditionally call it racism, right? Or we'll call it double standard law, right? Fact, it's really the operations of the secret treaty of Rome. Meaning that Europeans know they're not white people. They don't guess, they know they're not white people. But from a social engineering position, they declare it for social engineering. As an example, I'm going to get with you. As an example, when Facebook went IPO, the partner to this guy, Zuckerberg's partner, right? When it went IPO, he immediately went to Switzerland and nationalized. And they got married. Why? So the Inquisitioners, which is the IRS, which is really the Inquisition Revenue Services under the Secret Treaty of Verona, going to take half his stuff, and then some. You understand? They take a few percentage, but he can't come back here and call himself white no more. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because it's a status.
Right, I got you.
You understand? The same thing with, what's that guy, Jim Rogers, the other European? went to Ireland, nationalized, and go check your record. Punch it up on your computer. An average of 165, they'll put it, it's connotative linguistics. They'll say 100, approximately 165 white, wealthy Americans are denouncing their U.S. citizenship and nationalizing every week on average, right? And the only reason why it ain't bigger is because of the logistics involved, if you understand. And then taking their finances, whatever they got, and trying to convert it into other assets, etc., before this thing crashes on us, because this thing is falling apart. Now, the deal is they didn't get no UCC1 financial statement. They nationalized, because in order for you to claim sovereign right, it goes with your nationality. It's just that they've been playing it against us, but now that they starting to get thrown under the bus, you understand? They're going to the universal principle. That's how you save a nation, nationalize all over the world. The Honorable Hugo Chavez, when these Europeans with all these stocks, right from here, from New York, was screwing their people, what did he do? They nationalized the apartment buildings, nationalized the fields, nationalized the electric grid. Then they turned around and did it in Bolivia. Then they turned around and did it in Argentina. Now they nationalized in South Africa. Same thing. It's the same thing our people's supposed to be doing. But they're behind the 8 ball because they're not dispensed this information because the Negro leaders are compromised.
So where should these individuals go to do that? Since some go to Ireland, some go to Switzerland, South Africa.
That means they must in the world. This is what happens in the world. Like, say these planks. Each one of these planks here represent a nation. Just like the flags that's on the parkway, right? When nations get in trouble, economically, socially, politically, all over the world, the universal salvation, economic, political for any nation state is nationalization. All over the world. All over the world. This is what Noble Drali and Marcus Garvey was actually doing for the Asiatics of the North. You understand? This is also why you have the infiltration. This is also part of what you would call of what Malcolm, Clarence, and Khalid found out. Now, logically, the level of information requires real study. So they start implementing steps or degrees getting this information to the people so the people won't think they're selling them out. Or they're against, you're against the club now, because we deal with our clubs like gangs because we don't understand nationality because it's been held back from us for so many generations. But we don't know that that's the political remedy to our economic, social, political problems. We'll be looking at the clubs because they're effective on a small level, but that's not the cure. The cure is nationalization all over the planet. I'm good, brother.
All right, my man.
Peace.
Peace, good brother.
You made a statement earlier that
qualified statement. Go ahead.
That I have to have you address.
Be straight. Be straight.
Right?
Be straight,
You
man.
said that a black man can't be president of the United States of America. That's I'm out.
Yes,
Let me
right.
just phrase this right so that you fully comprehend where I'm coming from. Right? Now, understand, I'm pretty sure that everybody in the room knows that we're not black.
Be straight.
Right?
Get to the point.
But the president of the United States of America self-identifies as black, right? Within the framework of the socially engineered reality that exists within the United States of America.
Social engineering.
Most people operate under suspended belief. The suspended belief that they all white people, that they all black people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
that's the social engineering connotative.
right.
Yeah. I agree.
Accordingly, and
hurry up.
this is the entire nation. The suspended
Yes.
believe in whites, the suspended believe in blacks.
Yes.
Right? They believe that the president is black.
Their belief that it does not support the facts, though. Read this while he's talking. From here,
So
here
now,
to here.
Having the understanding that something is real if it's perceived to be real. God, Jesus, Allah. It's perceived to be real, so it's real. And people act upon it based on their perceptions.
Yes.
Like if you're relaxing right now and your eyes are closed and you perceive somebody approaching
Yes.
you might swing.
Yes.
So perception can be reality.
Well, that's the person's reality. It's disassociation.
Well,
You know, just like, you know, in other words, like for instance, give you an example. Give you an example. Because you or I think, as an example, that, say, for instance, if you're paying income tax, right? Say you're doing business, right? And you got a license, right? And you're paying income tax, etc. You can believe that the United States has a treasury and you're paying the Treasury Department. Am I correct?
Correct.
Right? And a lot of people do that, don't they? And we're not talking about dummies, are we?
No.
Talking about intelligent people, right? And we're talking about people that are in our families, people we know, we respect, and, you know, all degrees. Am I correct?
Correct.
So let's go to congressional records, and I'll show you the same analysis that I'm talking about. Obama got a nationality. And when I say that a black man can't be president, it does not mean that I take personal affront to that or that I agree with someone's position. We're talking the fact. Because a black man is Christian property. That's one of the brands that was created by the Dutch masters to identify property. It's chattel property. It's not a human being. However, if they get you to agree with that, it is a legal status that compromises the natural person and takes them out of the natural status into a status of color. And a status of color in law, for instance, you already know, because we use those words loosely, you know, people of color and terms like that, and we feel pretty comfortable with it because it's commonly used. However, anybody that knows law, and of course it's in operation every day when they're dealing with us. Person of color is an artificial person. But most of our people will tell you it's Afrocentricity, wouldn't they? And just because they want to believe that, it doesn't change the fact that it is an artificial person. And when such persons come before any tribunal in law or in civilization, it's a class. They're in a class, and they agree to that. And the Christian black codes automatically come into play. The Buck Act and the Negro Act, etc., come into play automatically. Now, it is in fact a legal status. It is not dismissed. It is indeed, just as you said, it's their reality. So the slave caste has a reality of their status, even if they don't understand that as status. And so does the ruling class know that that's their reality and deal with it accordingly, right? Example. Here, will you read this for a minute? Just these first paragraphs.
I can agree with what you said.
Now, these first three paragraphs, and I'm going to show you something, and I want to have the doc, see, because he's a constitutionalist too. We're both constitutionalists, because we know it comes from our law. Do you understand? And so therefore, if me or you, if we're guiding our people in some kind of organized body, and logically, yes, we're going to try to do some economic parity within our community, but we must take in consideration that it's being controlled by outside forces, meaning that we're under colonial operations. Therefore, to some degree, we're going to have to deal with them whether we like it or not. Therefore, it is intelligent that we deal with them with intelligence and knowing who they are and knowing self. You know, and I know, that when our people have even these different organizations, right, that they may be doing these so-called community things in, and they may have a 501c3 and stuff like that. Don't even know, they be thinking that they're being independent, and they're actually signed up for property. Now, just read these three paragraphs as an example. This is the congressional records of the United States, right? But just these three paragraphs will demonstrate to you what the leader guys know, what these politicians know, why they got our people marching and praying around, paying income taxes, don't even know who they're paying, got 501c3 with their little black organizations, thinking that they're really pulling their people ahead, when the leader guys know this, but they won't tell this to the followers because they won't buy you a $3,000 suit, you understand, and give you that nice Lexus and Cadillac out there, while you throwing the passwords at them, you know, like Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, and all mystery. Not that there's not some truths there, if you understand. We're talking about playing the guilt trip, while they know another truth for their actual selves, and they're playing a total different game. Can you read that for the camera, please? Doctor.
United States of North America, Speaker, Representative James Traficant Jr., Ohio, addressing the House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11. Members of Congress, our official trustees, presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. Second paragraph. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9th, 1933. 48, STAT stands for Statute. 1. Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt. Being bankrupt and insolvent, HJR.
That's House of Representatives.
House of Representatives.
Yeah, Journal of Representatives, the House Journal.
House Journal of Representatives, 192, 73rd Congress, in session, June 5th, 1933, joint resolution. Joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolve the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. Third paragraph.
Yes. Yes, go ahead, continue. Yes.
The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. All United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only under emergency war powers. With the constitutional republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. This new form of government is known as a democracy, being an established socialist/communist order under a new governor for America. This act was instituted and established by transferring and/or placing the office of the Secretary of the Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund. Public Law 94-564, page 8, section HR.
Yes. House Rule. Yes.
House Rule 13955 reads in part, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States.
All right.
Question mark.
Now, so when people are paying taxes, they think they're paying taxes to the United States Treasury, don't they?
Yes,
It's been dissolved.
What year was that?
This was actually, then you must know history, from Woodrow Wilson, when he met with the popes, representatives of the popes of Rome and the bankers of England off Jekyll Island in Georgia to counter Noble Drew Ali, because he set up the Old Canaanite Temple in 1913. Then 1933, Roosevelt backed that up because they're slow walking to undermine the republic, which is our constitution contract that keeps them in check, right? And you can see all their offices they transferred under the IMF. That comes under the Secret Treaty of Rome. You understand? And so the people are paying the popes of Rome. They don't know that the IRS belongs to the Jesuits. They're paying the IRS, which is a private, foreign, religious, for-profit corporate entity collecting taxes against their dumb Negro slaves who don't know that they're not Negroes, who swear they saved and swear they know history. They're going to tell you about Hiawatha and don't even know what's going on in their face right now, and they're paying for their own enslavement.
Okay, let's step back for a moment. Let's see if we can apply this to what we're experiencing
Yes,
today.
exactly.
It is said that there are government officials that would like to tax the very rich.
Exactly.
This is the big argument that we get.
Yeah.
Making the rich over $250,000 pay their taxes.
Yeah, pay their share.
As it relates to what we just discussed, what should a brother or sister right out here on the street, if we could tell them something about between this and the realities of what we're
The
listening
real deal is that they're not supposed to be paying any. Number one, they're not corporations.
What did Governor Romney mean when he said that corporations are people too?
Because they are. That was created. That's the straw that was created with the 14th Amendment when they closed the Freedmen's Bureau. That's where they registered Negro, blacks, and colors as Christian property, moved exactly like real estate. That's the double standard of law that our people keep talking, but they can't name it. You know, we keep talking about the dog and challenge, they can't name it, and so when we come together, we're always spewing emotions, but we don't have any cure because we don't know what's in operation. This tells you what's in operation. And when you know what's in operation, then you can produce stuff like this, because this is how you counter it. You counter it with knowledge. This is the IRS coming after the brother, right? And this is not only 1 year, then he responds to them in propria persona, flying his colors.
Would you say that this...
That's just an example.
That, would this
with this
entity
knowledge
saying that they're coming after him, the IRS?
Yes.
Are we saying that it is the popes? The
yes,
Jesuits
it is.
doing this?
It's the secret treaty of Verona in operation.
So the Jesuits and the papacy is coming after folk with the IRS.
That's it.
If you get a letter that says that you haven't paid your taxes and we would like to call you in for a meeting, they are representatives of the papacy.
I do apologize. Just give me 1 minute. I just hope that I have
edit this out anyway.
I just hope I have this treaty up. See, because I'm traveling light, because I try to catch a lot of trains getting here. If I could just, you have the treaty wrong with you?
Actually, I don't, brother.
It's 7:46 now, brother. Your time is good?
Your time is good. Let's get this done.
Okay.
See,
because I got till about 8:15.
Yeah.
About a half hour.
Yeah, because, you know.
I got about a half hour.
All the trouble I ran on these trains trying to get here, I'm finishing this.
Where are you going now?
We'll go to the theater after we leave here.
How you going to get there?
Go catch a train, get
No, man, I'll drive you down. I'm going.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, because I'm parked right on the corner, so I'll just drive you over.
Oh, if you got to leave,
8:15.
Larry probably drop him
You
off.
think I'm staying here all night, man? You got cash roll out?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Oh, Doc.
Go ahead.
As an example, and just this ain't the treaty wrong, but as an example, when you're dealing with problems of people, and you're in a leader position, you have a responsibility to deal with real world politics, not with emotions. This is congressional records that will give you what? The original 20 sections to the original article of Amendment 13. Now read here Article 12 as an example. That's congressional rule.
The traffic, this is Section 12.
Yes.
Basically, this is what we call Amendment 13.
Yes. Remember in the books now that they give our children, you only have 2 pieces.
Oh, yeah.
You only got 2 pieces.
Oh, yeah.
As a matter of fact, take this with you, Doc.
Oh, please, yeah, man. Because,
Because, we're constitutionalists, so...
Yeah, well, I carry this with me.
Oh, yes.
I carry the Constitution. I carry 2 Constitutions with me. And basically, the amendment is a very short piece.
Yes.
I mean, the 13th Amendment looked like that.
Yes.
Section 1, Section 2.
Yes. Now look.
But now, how many sections you say, sir?
Here's the congressional records. Now, this is back to the point. And this is what I'm saying to you, how our people are being educated and they think they're being educated. That's social engineering, connotative linguistics. Now, we're taking this, now, as you can see, it's copied directly from the Congressional Globe. This is because people will say, oh man, y'all Moors making this stuff up. That's that Moorish thing, right? We deal with knowledge. Read that. Okay. Now, read that yourself. No, read this.
Would it work?
Now,
here's Amendment 13. I see that there are 2 sections here. Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, comma, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, comma, shall exist within the United States, comma, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2, Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. It appears, brother, what we are talking about here is that those are 2 sections in here.
Yes.
However, in reality, to this particular amendment, I count 20.
Yes.
20 sections, of which only 2 are here.
Yes.
Which means there are 18 things folk don't know.
What would happen with the general masses, right, when our people are talking about the social problems in our community, and then we bring up the facts that scholars know, it would appear that we're contradicting our brothers in the little clubs, the little Negro groups that are marching and praying and all this other stuff, and they think that we're countering them when we're really trying to bring their degrees up, because information is being held back from them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Now read number 12.
Here's now, I gave 2. Brother shared this. This is section 12. That is what? 10 below the 2
Yes.
I gave.
Yes.
Okay. The traffic in slaves with Africa is hereby forever prohibited on pain of death and the forfeiture of all the rights and property of persons engaged therein, and the descendants of Africans shall not be citizens.
Now, does any of our people need to expatriate from some citizenship that never existed?
You can't.
Exactly.
You can't leave what you never were.
Exactly. Can they be so-called U.S. citizens and then be taxable under the U.S. codes?
They can't be if they're not citizens.
Oh. So what happens if you bring this argument to our people and they're caught in the emotional belief systems that are taught on the street corners and through these little Negro clubs? They'll be debating with you all day long, wouldn't they?
They would believe that you were telling untruth.
Exactly. Or I have
And they
an
would
opinion.
accuse you of you made this up.
Exactly. Now, here's a demonstration. Now, and I'd rather you do it because we're both constitutional. Because I'm sharing with you, really. You know, because we didn't get a chance to talk. You know, because we're always moving.
Yes. This is the first time you and I ever really got to sit down.
Because we're always rolling. Now, here's the Internal Revenue Service coming at a brother, and you see the exhibit because they're taking him to court, right? Now, here's his response. And he's flying his colors, and then there's the Internal Revenue's response to his response. Now, have you read it so you know it's not coming from me. This is here, back to Brother Sonetta, because we always rap and we talk about these things. You know, what is it with this sovereignty thing? You know, because when you're talking sovereignty, you're talking nationality. So let's talk about it in work, which means here's a demonstration of it in work. It ain't got to prove. You know, I say, I'm from Missouri. All right, here's evidence. I gave you one piece of evidence, now I'm going to give you another piece of evidence to back that evidence up. Because the issue is status all over the world, isn't it? Because the status determines a person's capacities and incapacities to exercise rights or claim of property in relation to third parties and the state. And if the identity is neutralized, then the status is dead. And when you're talking status, it equates in society with a state. One's capacity to make claims in relationship to property. Now, as a snippet, this is a standard letter from the IRS, and you can turn around for the camera to see it too.
You didn't file a Form 1040 tax return. And this is Exhibit IRS 1812.
And they're coming out, and this was not the only one because they're coming for a couple of years, but this is just one. Now, and this is his, and of course they follow up talking about what they're going to do.
And most folk get scared to death when they see it.
And they're backing up talking about what they're going to do, you know, the old garnish, and they're going to determine, they're going to make up a thing for you and determine and charge you and lock your stuff up, you know, the usual thing.
Yes, yes.
This is his response. Now you read that, this is a response.
Okay, it says, to whom it may concern.
You know, you got to come with the structure.
Okay.
Because in law, when you're talking sovereignty, you don't talk sovereignty, you're talking nationality, so you must fly your colors.
Flying your colors
Yes, that means your national flag, your flag. In other words, because when you're not flying your colors, you're considered an abandoned ship. Because remember, when they're operating with the birth certificate and those other instruments, they're dealing with bottomry instruments, shipping, port, water, breakwater, you know, whole birth, which they also talk about here, which you'll read, where they use the birth certificate, etc., in the congressional records. Now, so when you know, this is demonstrating when you know how you're supposed to structure things to counter their claim. Because they're claiming personam jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction, which is classification of law. So you must fly your colors. All right? Now, read and notice the structure of this.
Okay.
It's important because that deals with the activation of the sovereign right that you're talking about. It's all over the world.
The notice in law is sent via United States certified mail, number, then give number, from and then lists name, address, to whom it may concern, Department of Treasury. And then I asked her, Hosang L, going through that, received unsigned mailing dated May 21st, 2012, which is the first document.
Which is in reference to the suit that we're
Right.
hires is coming out.
Okay. From a mysterious person in your agency, the mailing exhibit, okay, number, was received on the 24th day, May 2012. Notice, and then notice date, tax period. This mailing has no signature of a natural living person, which indicates an inducement to fraud. Please send me a complete and clear documentation signed by a natural living person exposing, explaining, revealing, and disclosing the actual and/or implied relationship or relevance of your form. As of now, it is unclear to me who you are, what nation's constitution authorized your activities, and how can I recoup or reconvey my already lost, misgiven, misappropriated, and generally wrongfully forwarded monies. Bang, bang, bang. Same heading on top. Take notice that this correspondence, your mailing, and future correspondence will be published on the Moorish Nation publication website. Please send all further correspondences in care of. Notice to the agent is notice to the agent is notice to the principal. Notice to the principal is notice to the agent. It's got a Moorish stamp. In good faith, trust, truth, and honor, I am. His signature, 5th day of May. CC's Honorable Eric Holder, Douglas Shulman, High Commissioner, United Nations, International Court of Justice, Vienna Convention, treaty violations, etc., Minister Taj Tarik Bey, Great Seal, National Association of Moorish Affairs. Enclosures. Copy of mailing from Internal Revenue Service, 4 pages. This is page 2
Now,
of 2.
this is their response to his response to their claim.
Okay, now this is dated July 24th, 2012. And this is
From the IRS.
we received, yeah, Collection Operation Manager, and dated Stephanie Perry. Dear taxpayer, we still haven't identified.
Yeah.
Dear taxpayer,
Yeah.
thank you for corresponding to our inquiry about the above tax return. Based on your information, we agree that you aren't legally required to file a tax return for the above tax periods. We are taking no further action at this time, but may need to contact you again if other tax issues arise. You don't need to reply to this letter. If you have any questions about this letter, you may write to us at the address shown above, or you may call us at 00 individuals or 1-800-businesses. For non-case related questions, you can also check on our website at www.irs.gov. Sincerely yours, Stephanie Perry, Collection Operation Manager.
Now that's exercising. That's exercising nationality. In other words, corrected status, but that's also understanding this. So you're not dealing with emotion. You don't get no lawyer. You don't get nobody march, and you don't protest. If you're of a nation, you use national and international law. That's what you're supposed to do. That's why Obama signed rights of indigenous people when he came back. That's what we're supposed to be exercising. That's it in operation. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
I understand
All right,
that.
I need you to
Now,
I understand
again,
that.
cross-examine the
so
brother
when
Booker
we're
T.
enforcing Constitution, that's enforcing Constitution. You understand why? Because we got treaty. Their obligation. Article 6 of the Constitution. All debts and contracts entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be binding, not for, against the United States, under this Constitution as under Confederation. And all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority thereof, what shall be the supreme law of the land. And if you don't have a nationality, you ain't forcing no treaty. See how simple that is? And this is in an operation, which means that ain't discussing opinion. That's demonstrating it. This is what we're trying to get our people to understand, so they don't keep looking at this emotionally, or like it's threatening their club, or it's different beliefs. It's not. This is world politics. And until our people learn the principles of civilization, which our forefathers founded, not them Europeans, then we're subject to the BS that we keep complaining about. But if we're going to start dealing with facts, then we can start getting some remedies. It's that simple. And it's still they're going to be resisting. But it doesn't mean that you can't win, does it?
That's right.
You see his thumbprint and the stamp, highest seal. Do you understand? And so when people keep saying, you know, and this is again where a lot of people, even Moors, misrepresent this information because they be trying to make people followers in clubs. It ain't a club, it's your birthright. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And this doesn't matter what club you belong to, we're all one. And this is why you see even the brothers on the west side, etc., with all the so-called Indian tribes, everything. That's why you see them dissolving all the trees with these frauds. And half of them with non-coke and all, and claim their bloodline, Moorish nationality, because that's where the law stands. In other words, our clubs, our little tribes, yes, but that's where we got divided with each other. That's why there's European rulers in our own land. You understand? Because we got caught up in these little tribalisms and thinking that we're going to be supreme. You can't. The sovereignty is not in the tribe. The sovereignty is in the nation, the mother nation. That is the collective nation. You know, and this is where we keep getting tricked. You know, and a lot of people that know these international law principles won't teach it because their little clubs will fall apart. And they, you know, they can't pilfer off their little follower guys. This is what Malcolm found out. Because this thing is bigger than you think. That's why when we came down to that ballroom, you already knew what was up. Because there's nowhere to go. This is worldwide. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. Why do you think they closed the books? They killed King, was he 33-degree Mason? He knows. And what did Malcolm found out? Just like many others. You know, they already had schedules for him, for Martin and other people like him, you know, to interject into the different so-called black groups and take credit for stuff that they're doing, just like people take the credit for the March to Washington. That's the Panthers.
So when you say King was a 33-degree Mason, was he a Mason of the Negroes, or was he like combined?
No. See, they have it separate.
Okay.
See, because there's still the black codes going on here. And they get to like 33 degrees, but there's 96. If you understand, there's still separation because they're still operating on the secret treaty of Verona. Do you understand what I'm saying? And we need to understand that. Which means our people, even when they mean some good, they're compromised. And it's not a criticism. It's just accept where you are on the board. Let's work with our strengths. But know where you are. Know what you're playing. Know when you can't dribble. But you're still playing ball. So you got to go to your strengths. Sound good, brother?
Peace.
Peace.
I'm swatting at a fly. Negro fly. What's a Negro and how did that term get associated with our people?
European essentially, as a matter of fact, one of the ways he talks about that is that movie he made with Eddie Murphy, Trading Places. Mm-hmm. They're really telling you the truth. Another way they tell you is in The Matrix with the red pill, blue pill.
Right.
Another way they tell you is the straw man, whereas we're really, you know, what you call Judah, tribe Judah, the real Jew, but we ain't Jews because there's no J in Hebrew. But you know, we punked out, and so the line of Judah punked out. He ain't got no heart, right? Then they made the straw man. Then they took over the industry, the Tin Man. Then the Emerald City is the green star, Emerald, which is Venus, which is the five-pointed star. Then of course the Masonic signal, Dorothy tapping her heels 3 times. I just want to go home. The ritual in Masonry, struck in the head. She bumped her head because it was a storm. You know what I'm saying? Wicked Witch of the West. Negro Yavera Arribo, which is the nemesis, the black chimpanzee monkey. You know what I'm saying? The monkeys is the nemesis, and the Wicked Witch. Crack, crack, crack. And then follow the yellow brick road, the Zodiac Law, to the Emerald City, Wizard of Oz. Then Dog, God spelled backwards, pulls the curtain, everybody's shaking, they scared. And Dog, he don't know, because he ain't gonna, and so the big Wizard of Oz, you know, he's a big fraud. In other words, it's really still telling you the story of us. It really is.
Now, understanding the analogy, right? And understanding that writers craft stories.
Symboliographers.
Craft stories in order to lead readers.
Yes.
Down the path that they want the leader to go.
Also,
in order
to talk to each other.
In order to understand the
Yes.
story. the term Negro
Yeah.
comes from one language, from one area. How could that language from that area, how could the people who
Name the area, name its application.
Spain, Spanish,
All right.
Iberian Peninsula.
All right. Now, when you look at white person in law, and they talk about the Iberian Peninsula, who does the free white person apply to? And then they specifically say who
Black,
doesn't apply
so-called
to.
black.
It applies to Phoenicians, North African, Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal. It does not mean Caucasian race, does not mean European or Aryan race. It tells you right there in the law. And what you call Spain is what? Andalusia. And who ruled there? Now, when Obama left and he made the speech in Hucuta, right, and revealed that the Constitution, right, come from what? Muslim law.
Yes.
Then his wife goes to the Alhambra, the last stronghold of the Moors. They triangulate it right in your face. Then he come back here and sign the rights of indigenous people, and our people still ain't caught on. They want him to lay across the railroad tracks. That's what they want. They want him to be a Negro sacrificial lamb.
And he looked at that pictograph on the wall in ancient Kemet and said, "Oh, that guy looked like me."
Of course, he's sending signals. He's sending signals.
I always felt he was kind of winking at us.
He's sending
Who could pick up
signals.
those signals?
No one
He's a constitutional lawyer.
Knowing and
He taught it.
understanding,
Yes.
He taught it in college.
knowing and understanding that Spain under Moorish control was our Andalus,
Yeah.
right? Further understanding that 711 AD, Tariq ibn Zayd
Yeah.
conquered Spain, defeated
Yes.
Roderick, king of the
Yes.
Visigoths,
Yes.
right? Knowing and understanding that there was something called a Barbary Coast slave market.
Yes.
Knowing and understanding that the Islamicized or Arabized or Muslimarized,
Almoravides.
Muslimarized, the Almoravids was the second
Yeah.
wave of the Moors.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the first wave under Tariq.
Yeah.
Right? Knowing that they also trafficked what is commonly referred to in the present day as sub-Saharan Africans
Yes.
into the slave market. It is my contention that the term Negro came into contact with our people during this time, courtesy of the Moors, because they were trafficking non-Muslim peoples
Yes.
as slave labor.
Yes.
The
And Muslim
indigenous inhabitants, well, I'm not dealing with Muslim or Muslim, I'm dealing with Muslim or non-Muslim. The indigenous inhabitants of that region who spoke Spanish, right? Because Spanish is a combination of Latin, spoken by the Romans,
Yeah.
and Gaul, spoken by the Germans,
Yeah.
right?
French.
Well,
Because
France,
France is a
Gaul-
form of Latin.
France,
Yes,
derivatives,
yes,
France
It's all
was
connected.
Gaul.
Yeah, derivative
but
of
the
Latin.
language, the
Yes,
language
yeah, the
itself,
linguistics.
it wasn't French yet. It was
Language.
Gaul,
Yeah.
right? And the commerce between these peoples created that language because the Romans ran up in there and sacked Gaul. We wanted that gold out of there, right? And this is how the Roman province was held by Germans. Roderick, king of the Visigoths,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
a German, right? So
Visigoths.
Tariq, he fought Germans. He didn't fight Romans, right? There weren't any Romans at that time anyway.
Didn't exist.
Well, they still existed.
No, not Romans. But I understand what you're saying. But we're talking.
The reconstructed
Right.
history.
No. They were still in the east. The Western Roman Empire fell in 476 AD under Odoacer. Tariq defeated the Visigoths in 711.
Yeah.
The Eastern Roman Empire fell in 1453
Yeah.
to the Young Turks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Constantinople became
Yes.
Istanbul.
Yes.
Right? So, understanding that, at this time, the only place where they're speaking this language, where this word Negro,
What language?
Spanish.
Now Spanish is
Spanish is not. It's
not going to
it's a
exist for a
connotative.
while.
Wait
No,
now.
no,
Wait now.
respectfully.
Okay.
Spanish is connotative. The language is Moorish Latin.
Oh yes.
They call it Spanish later. But the language is not really Spanish. It is Moorish Latin, and was also spoken here also on Turtle Island was spoken here too. There's different dialects, and was spoken in the southwest of Mexico too.
And Latin isn't a language.
Isn't what?
Isn't a language.
Actually.
Because, no, it doesn't have a script. To be a language, you must have a script.
Actually, it does have a script.
No, it doesn't. It has a Greek script.
Well, no, it doesn't have a Greek script.
It does. The ABCs are
And
Greek.
we're called
And Greek comes from the Kemites.
Well, actually,
yes.
Actually,
They don't have a language.
Not to turn the conversation, but the alphabet, alpha,
Aleph, Beth,
second
Kaba,
letter,
Kaba, the Q.
Greek, right? All I'm saying to you is this, right? In the European context, right? Not in the actual context, but when they took over, they made their stuff, our stuff, their stuff, and presented it as that.
And
right?
it's kind of we have to, and this is where we have to kind of fix this thing because because what we sometimes try to do out of emotions and because we've been abused is try to say theirs and ours, and it's not exactly that because they didn't steal everything because we brought it to them in the Renaissance. We raised them out of the Dark Ages, everything they didn't steal.
And the Renaissance is a rebirth. Because the Renaissance is the birth, and the birth was the so-called Greeks don't exist. These
exactly,
are Greeks don't exist. Well, Romans don't exist. These are
really
people who are coming from the northern, coming down, and they're going to superimpose themselves over a people of the Mediterranean areas that are going to be an African people.
And what we've done...
And then out of this, we shared the knowledge freely to those who were capable of handling.
I'm going to take issue with that statement for this reason, right? The area that became Greek, the Hellenistic age, the Hellenistic area, Macedonia, Greece proper, those islands, the Aegean, right?
Aegean Islands here.
We can still see today the friction that those people engaged in that area. They're still doing the same thing. That's where your ethnic cleansing was coming from.
Even up to
in the Balkans.
Even up to the north.
Right? This is what the Soviet Union put in the smash. Right? The Russians put them in the smash because they're the kind of those people too. Right? Slavic people. Right?
That's where the word slave came from.
And in 146 BC, Rome annexed Greece. There was no more Greece. After that, it stopped being the Hellenistic age or the Grecian age and became the Greco-Roman era. Okay, that's 146 BC. No more independent Greece. So in that respect, no more Greece. Rome lasted from then until it became imperial under Augustus in 27, I believe.
But when you're using the word Rome as a word, looking at etymology. No, well, Rome is a mythological concept created when they were defining how they came into existence between these two brothers that had a war, Romulus and Remus. Romulus won, and therefore, but they really were peoples of the northern areas that had come down into this and had congregated around what's called the Latium mountain ranges. And then out of this comes Latin, but these are people who, as a people, don't really exist.
Exactly.
They come into existence. They come into existence because of the nature of them physically moving into an area. It's just like what happened in America.
I don't disagree with you.
They come into an area and they physically come into this area and then they call it America. But the concept of America, as it relates from a European perspective, doesn't exist. That's all an illusion created by people who came into power and were able to dominate a people and create this concept. The same with the Romans. To have a language, you must have a script. Rome doesn't have a script. Greek doesn't have a script. And you have to have a language, a symbolism, siphons that are going to give you that unique flavor. And that third language in the Rosetta Stone is really another Kemetic African language that the Greeks, no, Hieratic is the middle one. You have the so-called hieroglyphs or meduneta at the top, the pictograph. Then you have the scriptic language, which could be called Hieratic or Demotic, which is the language of the everyday people. And then you have what they call classic Greek. But it's not classic Greek. It happens to be a language that was given to these people from Africans that they were able to adapt. It's like if we were to write a tablet, and on the top we have the King's and Queen's English, in the middle we have Standard American English, and at the bottom we have Ebonics.
It's not that I fail to comprehend what you're saying, right? It's more that when we look at languages in antiquity, right, and we look at the evidence that the peoples that represented those cultures left behind, right, and we look at the bas reliefs that they left depicting themselves, right, we see clearly that these people who we identify as Greeks today didn't look like us, right? We know that they attained a level of civilization from direct contact with us. That's not hidden.
But can I just interject a moment?
Go.
In this Mediterranean basin for thousands of years, you have African folk all in this area.
Okay.
There is a civilization and a culture already there.
Okay.
You have a people who have been impacted by an ice age that are going to come across and they're going to settle in this area.
Okay.
They are going to inherit everything that they see.
Okay.
And then therefore they're going to start to adapt it, moving it, dealing with it, taking it. Okay?
Okay.
So that these people that come down and what we consider to be Greek, they're not Greek as it relates to the word that we use,
right.
Greece and Greek.
Yeah.
They really do not exist as a people. They exist because they told us they exist and we've bought into that illusion. But they themselves do not exist as a people. They inherit, you know, it's like this house is has all this. Somebody come in to this house, take this house over and then say, this is my stuff.
Well, I understand what you're saying, right? Actually, no.
You know, it's like here in America, brother. You have all the mounds. You have all the pyramids in America. Okay? That's like Bill Clinton and George Bush claiming their ancestors built that. It's like Israelis claiming that their ancestors built the pyramids. They were not in the area at this time to have even thought to build these.
Well, as a comical aside, I'd like to note
Now
that.
you see why we call them.
No, as a
disagreeable.
It's wonderful, man.
As a comical
Because if I'm on
aside,
my game, I got to be able to respond. Otherwise, I need to shut
as a
up.
comical
That's right.
aside, I want to point out that the Israelis do claim that they built the pyramids. They just claim that they built them under the lash of a slave master, right?
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
they do claim.
No,
that
that's
they
what I'm
built the
saying.
pyramids.
Opportunity.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying.
Opportunity.
But we know by history that these individuals that are going to come out of the city of Ur, which today is called Odessa, we know they don't even, by their own account, they claim to have left Ur, which is in Iraq.
Yes.
They claim to have left 2000 BC. The pyramids were already up and running 880 years, if not thousands, beyond that. Before that. So they could not even have touched the pyramids. The pyramids were probably ancient by the so-called people that are Haibri. We use the word Ibri, Haibri.
Not to
Now look
mention
at
the
this.
fact
Look at
that
this opportunity. Look at this opportunity, and this just shows you how the connotative linguistics work. So we're talking ancient history, and then we're saying how they said the slaves wasn't no slaves. That is
That's
a
it.
totally
That's it.
modern connotative
That's right.
thing. Until the Russians went down and took over the Slovakian nations, that's where the slave come from, because it's actually a nationality. Connotatively, when it's applied to a condition,
Yes.
that's connotative.
Yes.
When denotatively, it's improperly used.
Yes.
And this is again, so when we're doing research in history, back to the point, and it's back to what you're saying, when we really do the research, Greece didn't exist. When you do it, but it doesn't mean that the dynamics that we're talking about
The illusion
didn't take
exists.
place.
That's right.
And Rome is a structured illusion.
Yes.
Again.
Yes.
And so when we're talking about the symbol of the Etruscan symbol with the dog, right, the wolf, the Etruscan
Yes.
wolf.
Yes.
And then you've got Romulus and Remus.
Yes.
Then
Something.
Romulus killed Remus,
Yes.
etc. And then it's Rome. It's really talking about the hybrids.
Yes.
Really,
Yes.
in truth.
Yes.
And so the deal is, what we recognize when you start doing really honest research, and this is back to even as the brother was breaking it into the history of, you know, the brothers in the South and the North. One of the reasons why we fell, truthfully, is because we started violating our own laws, enslaving our own people. Now that's the real deal. It's not that it's separate people. you know, the Africans over here, and then the Africans over. No, we were enslaving our own people and violated our own laws. That's why. That's one of the spiritual reasons why we fell.
That's right.
And this is also one of the. And not only that, we had what? Muslim slaves, Christian slaves, etc. And all these Europeans did was take over some of these Moorish Bonnevilles. If you understand what I'm saying to you, and this is really, and then we call them plantations, and right as they teach the history now, they keep talking about, or like even if you look at the movie, right, The Birth of a Nation, you know, the first showing was under Woodrow Wilson, right, in the Casablanca, in the White House, right, and here you go, right, they'll show you, right, Moorish, they'll show you Moors as blacks, senators and congressmen eating watermelons and chickens, and then what do? Step down or die. And so what happens, our people are so emotionally talking about racism, because that's the password, that they're not paying attention to the fact that those are Moors that are what, congressmen and senators, so thus they don't know their own history here, and that's why they teach what, that George Washington was the 9th president, and the record shows what was the first, and the record shows he was the 9th, is to disconnect you. But this is back to and so in the issue, back as we bringing this thing together, what we're looking to do, how can we bring Dr. Hiawatha? How can we bring remedy now? We know that the history's been convoluted. We can discuss that forever. Let's talk cures. So when it's, even when, as you read the article, the real article Amendment 13, you know how they're teaching it to our people, and you know what the congressional record says. That's a contradiction, right? Now, we're in the Maghrib. Now, so they're talking, because when you're talking nationality or sovereignty or rights in society, you're talking nationality. And so when you're talking citizenship, you're talking nationality. So let's go again to congressional records. Let's go to their own records, right? So let's go to their own records, and we're talking about expatriation. Because a lot of people, Europeans and Asiatics, is trying to sell people expatriation packages for $500 and all that stuff, citizenship stuff. So let's show how much of a fraud it is. Let's go to the record. Let's get off the emotion. Let's first deal with the facts, then go take a position. Whatever position we take, fine. But first deal with the foundation. And will you share with us, Doctor?
You know, before I do this, because I'm going to bring my contribution to just to a pause here, because there are things. The remedy, I believe, brother and sister. You know, no matter how we look at this, they have never had the power to be able to come in and take us over. They've always taken advantage of us fighting amongst us.
Exactly.
Wherever I go into our history, I see it.
Exactly.
You can go back to most ancient times, and you can go to the day before yesterday.
Exactly. Divide and conquer.
That's the bottom line. Whether it be, and I call it the Willie Lynch syndrome.
Yes.
Because I don't even care if he existed.
Yes.
The syndrome exists.
It exists, and it's in operation.
And it's in good operation.
In operation.
My key is this. I think that one of the first solutions that we can do is to have a dynamic conversation like this, but still have unconditional love for each other no matter what comes out of this. I believe that as Brother Taj Bey talks about all these different groups that we have broken ourselves up into, that I think one of the very first things that we have to do, as Malcolm told us, they don't attack you because you're Republican. They don't attack you because you're Democrat or Christian or whatever. They come to you because you are a particular entity. He used the word black.
Yes.
Now, I believe that one of the most important things that we have to do is take emotion and put it in a trunk for a while.
Yes.
And understand that our greatest enemy is not the white man, it is ignorance. And once we fight this ignorance within ourselves and be able to identify and see it. And I think that my contribution is to allow our children to be critical thinkers.
Yes.
That's the key. Etymology. That's why when you and I were talking, I was getting on that language arts piece, because when you can understand language, and you can understand how people are coming at you, you can decipher critically what it is that they're actually saying and doing.
Yes.
And as I read these books about African slaves were brought to America, etymologically speaking, that's absolutely unacceptable. That's psychological. That has nothing to do with reality. African slaves, because our children say, psychologically now, when you look at connotative and denotative,
Yes.
this is why when you and I were talking, I was elaborating on this. When you're talking about connotative and denotative, what you're really saying is that in our children's mind, they're saying, well, they were slaves in Africa, so why wouldn't it would make perfect sense that they would be Africans in America.
Yes.
Not only that, but they talk about, well, Africans had slaves. No, Africans did not have slaves.
Exactly.
Because in America, it became a law. It became an institution. There's a book by Kenneth Stamp that's called That Peculiar Institution, which dehumanized the person.
Exactly.
Within an African context, you might have been in servitude to somebody, whether you were a prisoner of war or whether you did not have and somebody took care of you. But you were always a human being. You were always viewed upon as a human and sovereign, if you want to use that word. And you were always seen as an entity, and you owned yourself.
Yes.
But when they made a law that made you equal to the cattle, to the cows, and then you have the Dred Scott decision that says that there is no law that a white man ever has to obey as it relates to a black person,
Yes.
they have removed you from the scope of humanity.
Exactly.
And under those conditions, you can be treated any way. You can be murdered, you can be raped, you can be taken advantage of, but why not? Even people that come from other places can come here. And they would have as much right because they have a sense of personhood. And they could even be African people.
Exactly.
That could come and say, well, I'm Ghanaian, I'm Nigerian, I'm Twi, you know, I'm Yoruba.
See how status keep coming into play?
Exactly. I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Dominican, but what do we say here?
Crayons.
You see, and this is what we have to start to look at, and if we can just touch the spirits of our children, because they understand this. Because I teach Crayola crayons to children in kindergarten. They understand colors, and they also understand that if you start with red and go to orange and go to yellow, and you go to green and you go to blue and to indigo and then to finally purple, if you put a line across each color as it goes, that end line is black. All colors come out of the black.
It absorbs all of them.
When you talked about cosmogony and cosmology, we're talking about celestial concepts.
Yes.
We just happen to be on Earth and we're limited to
Having
speak
a human
Earth
experience.
concepts. But we are God having a human experience.
Yes.
And how we treat each other is how we treat God. No matter how much we put in the poor box, no matter if we get 10%. And what we have to start to do is get very real with our conversation. Put the emotion aside. Because we can spend our whole life talking about who threw us in the pit. But every moment we talk about that, we're not talking about how to get out the pit.
Exactly.
We got to get out this pit.
Exactly.
We got to take the emotion and put it away for a while. No matter how much we may hurt about being in the pit,
Yes.
we got to take that feeling, put it to the side, and put all that energy into getting out of the pit.
Start dealing with some remedy.
Know thyself. Understand the realities, but then understand the balance and strategy that you're dealing with out here. Because
Yes.
we're dealing with something that is real.
Yes.
We know the test does not measure someone's intelligence. But no matter what, our children are going to be judged and moved forward
By them.
by that standard that we call the standardized test. You know, brother, your children come home with oodles and boodles of homework that has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with them being able to intellectually become conscious of how they can become productive, divine human beings to give something as citizens to the world in which we're living in. But that's not the point. That's $1 billion business because people make up those homework assignments and they get paid for it.
Yes.
And we have to understand within the texture and within the temper and tone of this illusion, we also have to be bi-cosmic. We have to understand where we come from, but we also have to understand what we're experiencing.
And where we are.
And Dr. Clark used to say it. Know who you are in this world, know where you are in this world, know how in the world did you get there, understand why you are in the world, understand what you must do in the world, and how in the world are you going to do it. If we can answer those questions, my brother, we can make this happen.
Beautiful.
What we need is a conspiracy.
Okay, do I have to explain that?
What? Oh no. That's what we need. We need a conspiracy. We need a conspiracy that culminates on the day when everybody thinks the same way, when everybody sees the same thing, because everybody's looking at the same thing the same way. That comes from conspiracy. It's not something it's not an epiphany.
Not necessarily.
Like the Christians have when you fly up into the sky on that day. We need that day, but we don't need to fly. We need to open our eyes. Right? I understand the argument that the Moorish brothers make. Right? I don't make that argument because I don't think people are ready for that argument. Right? Which is why I think Moorish brothers get all the pushback that they get. The nationalistic argument. Right? Brothers who know me know that I attack at ground level. I attack the words that I hear coming out of these young people's mouths every day. And I attack older brothers for leading them in that direction. Right? Because if I have a rope around your neck, I don't care how much you're telling me, that you want to go this way. I'm pulling you in the direction I want you to go in. Don't move.
Until up to the late 1800s, African and Moor is used synonymously all over the world.
Don't move.
And it's not till we start operating here that we got caught up in this crap, denying our own birthright, which is why we keep getting screwed.
I don't have a problem with...
No,
wait.
Listen,
Come on. Hear the statement.
First of all, I'm qualifying myself because this is the deal. I'm not talking opinion. I'm talking record. Deal with the record.
Got you.
Deal with the facts.
Got you. I don't have a problem with...
Deal with facts.
I don't have a problem with you stating that Moor and African were interchangeable terms, right? But interchangeable terms within the framework of the ignorant Europeans who were using them doesn't say much, right? The people themselves, right? When you look at people like Awe people,
Awe being who, brother?
from the region that's called Ghana now, right? Ashanti, Akan people, Ashanti, Fanti, like that, right? When you look at these people, they have their own history, their own culture, their own oral traditions, and they don't call themselves Moors, right? When you look at their
Yeah, from tribal areas.
well, yeah, well, tribal areas from the outside.
No,
See,
I'm
that's
not
an external
dismissing
view.
that. I'm not dismissing. It's not view.
I got you.
What I'm saying is, I'm not dismissing any of that. What I'm demonstrating, what I'm saying, is that one of the keys to our demise as a people is that we keep falling into this tribal area thing as the supreme nation principle, when we're actually Canaanite, Moabite blood. That's who we are. That's the cover that covers all of us. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, when you come down to the nation states, most of your nation states that people identify today are totally contemporary and go back 100 years. Half of them didn't exist, go 150, and most of them didn't exist. You're dealing with the Moorish or the Ottoman Empire, and then claims made by Rome. That's it. If you go into the Berlin Conference, 1884, 1885, you're dealing with the European nations colonizing Morocco, which is the Moorish Empire in general. And these were broken up into nation states. But when you're talking at, you're not looking at it just from the modern term as you're looking at Morocco. You're looking at Moabite, Canaanite blood, Canaanite peoples, Asiatic, Canaanite peoples. So the Asiatics and Africans are synonymous.
And you know what's interesting about what you're saying, brother, is that the exact opposite was done with Ethiopia.
Yes.
Because Ethiopia was a term used to describe all peoples of dark complexion, if we want to call it that. But now it's a geographic location.
Yes. And then when you go into the ancient Superdivir, or the dividing of the land, Ethiopia, the area that, or some of the family we call Ethiopia is actually Abyssinia. And then Ethiopia was the term used for the dividing up of the land. And so it's generally applied to all of the people, but it really means something divided. It's actually an ancient Superdivir, or the annexing of the land between Ham and Cush.
And you know, when we look at the way we could just, for those, because you notice that I'm always trying to be specific. Because I'm being specific because I want our community who are not familiar with these terms. That's why I kept asking you to explain things, because I work with children, and I know that with our children you have to be very specific, and you can't assume that they know things. when we're talking about what has happened to us as a people, if we take where we're living right here, I'm not going to give the name or the number of where Sonetta, where we're taking this, but let's take this building. We have, this building is divided up into apartments.
Yes.
If every apartment was like a tribe, but all the apartments are in one building,
Yeah.
we're one people.
Yeah.
Geographic location, whether it be a river to a mountain range or whatever it was, natural boundaries that created people living in specific geographic locations,
Yes.
did not change the nature of the connection these people had with each other.
Bloodline, and we keep
And
dividing.
that's the key.
This is why we
That's the
keep getting
key.
beat, because we keep
That's right.
dividing ourselves
That's right.
into club
That's right.
tribes, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
No different than, all right, so
It's like an apartment. It would,
Yes.
this would be quite a building if there
Yes.
were no walls and everybody lived in
now
just
look
one.
what happens. Say Africa as an example. 54 nations, right?
And
Nation states.
more now because
Yes.
Sudan has just been
Yes,
divided.
nation states,
Yeah.
right? Now, generally, you have Muslim, Yahudi. That's usually related to our background from a spiritual perspective, right? Now, deal of it is, all of that can be traced back to Kabbalistic principles, even though they've been making into sects, if you get the point. And it still can be traced into Asia Major, up in Hindustan or ancient Peru, that we call India now, even with the Mauryan dynasty, Nanda dynasty, the Gupta dynasty, which can be traced to Zoroastrianism, Menster's law,
Yes.
and you can relate all of this stuff.
Yes.
And what happened is we divided against each other as if we had no relationship, but that has more to do with the way the European has been teaching culture, even about ourselves. The same thing with us here. Now, my grandma, then Blackfoot, my father, my mother, Ana Yanwia, or Cherokee. Ana Yanwia. So we can say Cherokee, but the European made that, we're Ana Yanwia. But when you deal with the tribes, we're ancient Canaanite Moabite people on the west. And it's not new stuff. But yet, if you say that and then don't say the tribe, people think you're talking about different people or that you're denying. But that's why we got beat up.
Yes.
Because we keep putting the tribal issue before the national issue.
Yes.
And the European pumps that because he already know that we were going to be divided, and he beats us up.
And they know how to be divided but come together when it's time to defeat.
Now,
Let me just say this,
yeah.
and then at least my contribution is here.
Yes.
Here's some books to read if you want to take this further. When We Ruled, by a brother by the name of Robin Walker, R-O-B-I-N Walker. Sheikh Anta Diop's fantastic book, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa. And then, from a feminine perspective, to get a sister's perspective, read Wonderful Ethiopians and Their Kushite Empires by Drusilla Dungy Houston. And read those books from the perspective of the conversation that we had today. And just to realize how we are all one people. And that it's important that we must stop fighting amongst
And
ourselves.
stop playing tribe club.
That's it. And if you want to be in a group, you can be in, but understand that the group is only a subset of the larger piece, and that the interest might be low, just like when you look at the way in which the temples were broken up in Kemet. You had 42 nomes, 42 cities, and each city had a patron.
Yes.
Every patron played a particular part in the overall spiritual philosophy
Yes.
of the entire nation.
That's where
But-
Congress principle comes in.
Okay.
The House.
Yes.
The House is the zodiac.
Yes.
That's where you get the House, where you got the Senate, and it's
Yes.
coming directly from, honestly, the law of the great peace, which ruled the planet, not just here.
Yes.
And this is where people, when they get into this, this concept that when they keep thinking that's separate,
Yeah.
the same principles apply. The other trick is when we go into the history and we go into our history, African, Kemetic history, and you'll see they keep going in with that patriarchal mentality. They were matriarchal systems.
Yes.
And
Yes.
in the linguistics, even when they're doing transliterations, you cannot go into true Asiatic African culture and history without the balance of the feminine masculine principle. And what they did when they transliterate both this history and the culture, they removed the feminine principle, and you keep getting it
Yes.
even in the linguistics
Yes.
from the masculine principle. And this is why even when people are doing so-called transliterations of the culture, that is corrupted.
Yes.
And then because dirt on our own side, we start looking at history, trying to dismiss the dirty part like that didn't have nothing to do with us, and just take the good part, blah, blah, blah. You can go to any school, you want to teach your children, go to the dictionary, go show them the dictionary, go look at black. First thing you're going to do is first put it in its proper matrix. Right after it'll have its proper matrix, because it's got 8 parts of speech, got adjective, which means it's not a noun, which means it can't be person, place, or thing. Then you go into its etymon, and then it'll have ME, which means Middle English, which means it don't go past the 1400s. Then it'll go, then derived from OLHG, Old High German, and in its original form means pale, which means these people ain't black, and they're looking at it as a code system. Then it'll go to the etymology of it, go right down, then it'll say right beneath it, black or more, then it'll take the brand off, and then it'll have small case with the black, then it'll have more, and says any Asiatic, African, Negro, black, etc., more.
And now the brother mentioned about the feminine principle, let me just add the fact of another book to read. Over to Shaka, wrote a book, Returning to the Mother Principle. And as brother said, although the male sat on the throne, it was the feminine principle that sat the male on the throne.
Yes.
Because who better to put the Pharaoh or the Nesubiti on the throne but the hand that rocked the cradle?
Right.
Okay.
And then, what beehive got a king throne?
Yes. Yeah. When you look at the big T,
You know,
it's a symbol.
what-
Yeah, but that's
what-
because when you came over here, brother, you brought that energy, man. Like, you see how lively things got when you sat over here?
It was paying more attention to me when I was over here.
I know,
But-
man. Go back over
Please.
there.
Yeah, because now
Look
it's
over
time.
here, Professor. Now, and so the principle is, and so,
Good to see you, Professor Larry.
and this is what's most important.
Walk slow, drink
Not
plenty
just,
of water.
for the loss of time, because the time factor, and the real deal, even as Brother Sinetta, called us, because the major thing that we all look for, and when you look at the work that Sinetta's been doing for years, he takes a neutral position because he's being absolutely objective.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you? He's taking the position of a reporter. He's a historian. He's a recorder. He's what you call a manuensis master, which means you can't, and it doesn't mean whether you agree or whether you disagree. It because you must leave the venue open because we're dealing with aggregate. We're dealing with contaminated aggregate, which we all must admit to. Do you understand what I'm saying? And you must filter it out. So therefore, you must take an objective position, even if you have your own other biases. And this is back even to where the Professor Larry comes from, which is proper. Challenge with questions because that makes you step up your game. But the reason, and so the point on why we even doing this, and this is back to some of the things that we're talking about, because he wasn't there when we did the other classes, when we was at the theater and stuff like that. The major issue, or why we decided to do this, as you all saw when we had all these people from these different groups, etc., different positions, who's going to let's present some remedy. We know the history, we can debate history. But for the most part, none of us were witnesses. So the witness we have is the record.
Exactly.
Right? And you know that the Christians spent years burning books, and the books that really have some substance or quality, usually they make it cost crazy. Just like if you go get a Corpus Juris Secundum, $10,000. If you understand what I'm saying. Even when you was dealing with ancient and modern Britons, that Scottish historians just giving history of the Moors in Europe, right? Book 17 note book. Then when the people started catching on to it, what was going up to 800 notes and 1,000 notes, little paperback, because they're trying to block stuff. As soon as we start teaching people the balance of jurisprudence, etc., then you get a used dictionary for 20 notes. Then they what? 100 notes, 400, 550, 1,000. And stuff like that, and even books etymology on the language, so that people can start breaking down things and put them in their proper perspective. Mm-hmm. And so the average brother walk out, he can't even go get these books without 2,000 or 3,000 notes in his pocket, and he's going to get not necessarily the best editions, if you get the whole point. Exactly. However, if you know how to search, you can, it works out once you get in the circle. But the point that I want to bring up, rather than having us debate what our opinion is on certain history, what remedy do we have to present? What remedies? Meaning, what focus? Meaning that we all know we got problems. We all know these Europeans been abusing us. what remedies do we have to present so that when people looking at these tapes, you know, they can say, oh man, that's deep, oh that's cool, man, you know.
Right, I got you.
What remedies do you have? The point of it is like when I showed you that document, like with IRS, that's remedy. This is remedy. What remedies, and what happens is when you see us get together from the different groups, they're debating their groups, their clubs, who was really this people, who was really, that's all cool. Ain't got remedy the daggone first.
Let me ask you, Taj, I agree with you 100%. Every group argues with itself. Just like the Moors. I come in touch, there's a good brother, he's a good brother, he goes by the name of Lord Abba. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yeah.
Lord Abba, he disagrees with the
Yes,
Moors.
yes.
It's like the Moors not asking the same thing. He say, y'all ain't teaching the right thing. You might say they ain't teaching the right thing. It's all Moors.
And this is why it's important for people to study.
Right.
See, because in other words, like if I present to you facts, right? Say, for instance, the history of the Moorish movement, what Noble Drawley did, what Marcus Garvey did, what the relationship was, going to the congressional records, going to COINTELPRO records, going to FBI records where you can decipher this stuff. Go to Noble Drawley's statements. Go to the structure of the temple. Go to the microfilm, because I went to the microfilm in Michigan. Cook County, went to the microfilm and looked up old newspapers on microfilms. That's how I do research. I don't go by emotions. I do research. You understand what I'm saying? And so logical, I'll take certain opinions, but my opinions, most of my opinions, I have biases like everyone else. But they'll be based in the facts as opposed to opinion. What you'll find that a lot of so-called, you know, like say for instance, even when you're talking about Moors, right? Most of our people, when they mention the Moors, they're talking from a third-party perspective, when it's actually your bloodline. Has nothing to do with a club, a belief system, just the fact that Noble Drawley set it up, meaning that if you go into the status issues in this country, or in the Western Hemisphere when you're dealing with the Dred Scott case, or even if you go after that, you go to the congressional records. We're talking about the Congress of the United States. The congressional records dealing with these people that they held to servitude. They dealing with the Sundry Free Moors Act in 1790, which determined the status of these people for them to have legal standing in law, not just here, but around the world. And so if you read that, meaning that if you read it and I'm reading it, then our conversation makes sense. If you're trying to tell me about that, then I take the position that because you're in the temple, you're trying to convert me to something, which is the wrong concept. We're talking bloodline. Now, there may be some club issues that's going on in the temple that may be disputes.
What is the difference between the temple Moors and the Moors that's out here?
What you find is most of the Moors that are out here, more of them are dealing with research.
Many of the ones that's out here?
Many of them.
Okay, right.
Many of the Moors in the temple, because the temples were infiltrated, when you're dealing with COINTELPRO operations under Calvin Coolidge, and then particularly under J. Edgar Hoover's, the national side of the movement was deliberately oppressed or suppressed within the Moorish temples. And then a lot of infiltrators came in with the determination to convert it into a belief system.
I'm glad you said that. I wanted to give you the magazine that came out, and they definitely got your name in there. If you turn to the next page, that was in a book that somebody brought me, a magazine that hit the streets. Here was your name right over here somewhere, right around here. You'll see Taj Tarik Bey. They got y'all under surveillance.
Oh, sure.
That's in there.
Sure. The Europeans call me, the so-called Jews, call me the Fourth World War. You know, I mean, so it's not new. See, because what it does...
So you can have that. Take that back with you.
Yeah.
They got you in there. They got a few people in there that they...
So what it does, because what it does, it not only exposes the European, it exposes the fraud on our side. Because we keep having this tendency to come at this thing like all self-righteous, like I'm right and everybody else is wrong because I'm in this club. Once you understand this, Noble Drawley brought or set up a political foundation, a forum for our people to exercise what is recognized by the international community of sovereign right by virtue of you, me, acknowledging our bloodline and the obligations that these Europeans have as an occupying government on people who don't know they're indigenous, who keep thinking only from a slave mentality because that's where they're taught by so-called black leaders and the Europeans. They don't even know that they're the sovereign nobles of the land. They don't even know that while we're talking, debating all these Negro groups, Europeans are in lodges with your fezzes on, with your noble titles, ill and bay on it, and running you with your own stuff. And we sitting around debating our belief systems. We keep talking about our own bloodline, our inheritance from a third-party perspective, which in law makes us incompetent. We keep thinking that this Moorish information is some club started by Noble Ali. No, that's a forum to dispense information that the world is presenting to you. This is why in Universal Proclamation of Human Rights, 1948, in the Rights of a Child, 1959, under treaty law enforcement under the Clinton administration, and Obama signed the rights of indigenous people. In each one of those dictums, it declares for these people to declare their nationality. Because without that, all these other things that these people's seeking cannot be remedied. Because any reparation is a repair in law from one specified and identified nation or nations to another specific and identified nation. As the only way reparation can take place. It takes place between nations. It doesn't take place between crayon people. Now, the very fact that our people will deny that they're Moors and then turn around and say that they're black is the supreme indicative or indication that they not only don't know language. Do you understand what I'm saying? That they're taking a position that actually neutralizes them in society, but because they're disagreeable about certain parts of the history, they're dismissing their bloodline. That's still your bloodline, whether you like it or not. You understand? And our people are looking at it from a club perspective, which takes them out of inherited capacity. Now, this is why, rather than debate with people, we command that they bring the law book, and then they bring the congressional record, then they bring then they bring etymological dictionaries, and then read, then make your debate. Then get away from saying whether it's my opinion, your opinion. Right. Now let's look at what the world is talking about, not just these Europeans here. We're talking about people from Africa, people from India, Europe, Asia too. All of them are commanding of you the same thing. And we're here squabbling with each other, talking about our clubs. Got no daggone remedy. I'm going to tell you about God, Jesus, Allah, Muhammad, and everything. Can't cure a daggone thing. We keep funding a bunch of Negro organizations that just keep us spinning wheels year after year after year. Cost more. Europeans still screwing us. They don't even know how to address a court. Don't even know how to address treaty law. Don't know how to address constitution law. Don't even know how to address the IRS that keep coming and destroying the community. But they know connect. We're full of crap.
Do you consider yourself a lawyer?
No. No.
Why not take that profession to help our people?
No.
Because a lot of the Moors know they law.
See, but that's a requirement. Let me explain to you. This is the point. Law and history goes together. The only thing where people associate that with Moors is because the Moors taught jurisprudence. It's the Moors that brought the European out of darkness, and he's ruling us with our own stuff right here. And our people keep saying that's his stuff. That's your stuff. Our concepts are wrong. And it's sort of like, here we're the direct descendants of the founders of civilization, and when the principles of civilization are presented, we start debating tribalism. Meanwhile, our own law is being used against us, and this European got the Sphinx head with the Moorish sword above it, means the subjugation of the Moabite woman. They may be claiming to be Christian, Jew, or whatever they may be claiming, and they're ruling you with your own stuff. And we get in debates, trying to see who got the biggest penis, or who got the most knowledge, rather than bringing remedies. They don't have remedies. For instance, like, when they go in a courtroom, they keep saying white man's law. Yes, white man's law. They just don't know that they're white men. You understand what I'm saying to you? And as soon as they say they black man, or they agree to be that straw that man have on a paper, it creates the black coast jurisdiction under the 14th Amendment.
So what you're saying right here, you don't consider yourself a white man, but if you go in under under the law, you walk in there as a white man.
Yeah, you daggone right. And so does other Africans. When other people see Africans, even brothers from the other side, know how sensitive we are. Also, they know how hypocritical we are. They also know that we sell our babies out to keep this man in power, and then come back, start some nigger organization, and march and pray. This is why they'll come in our community, make sure they stop at the hardware store and get a thick piece of plexiglass and come make a living off us just like everybody else, and try their best to move out of the community You understand? And not because they don't respect us as brothers and sisters. They know that we are operating in dishonor, and we're too daggone arrogant to recognize it.
Have you ever been in front of the judge?
Sure.
How he look at you when you start speaking?
Usually they close the court down.
Coming at him.
Usually they'll shut the court down.
Wow.
And usually deal with us last.
Because they don't want nobody to catch on to
Because you're freeing their slaves.
Right, there you go.
If you want, see, because keep this in mind, Sonetta, when you go into any court, don't just look at it here. It's in the world. The first issue is status. The second issue is jurisdiction / venue. Then adjudication. This is all over the world. But the Negro leader guys won't teach people these things because they want to always raise some funds, play the old victim game, and then pilfer the finance like they're doing something for these people, then take them in their courts under the black status, and immediately the black codes are what's being used in the court, or the Negro Act, or the Buck Act. And until that person changes the jurisdiction by declaring his birthright or his nationality, then the venue changes. Now they got to deal with constitutional law and treaty law. That's the distinction between Moors. Now, when you go into I gave him books, so I'm see if I have anything left to demonstrate. As an example, international law. Say, I don't think I have it in here. All right, say the House of Representatives. This is 1790, right? And I'll show you an issue in law. Now, how you want to take it, how I want to take it, what people's opinions are, is irrelevant.
Right.
Because most of our opinions is because, we didn't feed the dog. Or a woman didn't act like this morning, so we taking that on the world. Because it's in dealing with national and international laws, not dealing with opinion. You understand? So status is the issue. That's the foundation. Which means it doesn't matter whether he believes in some religion or not, it's irrelevant. Although we had our own religion, do you understand?
Right.
Now, and you know, Sinetta, because you see the dynamics. That when people are talking about the Moors, they keep talking from a club perspective or a belief perspective. When the real issue that Noble Drawley brought is the political forum for the return of the estate, the birthright. Then you understand that argument, because this reveals a lot of it. You understand?
Right.
Go ahead.
I just want to refer back to an earlier statement of mine concerning Al-Andalus and the trafficking of quote-unquote, I'm not calling these people this. This is what these people are called, right? Sub-Saharan Africans.
Yes.
Into Al-Andalus by Moors.
Yes.
I'm making an argument, and you seem to be substantiating my argument, although I know you don't mean to do that.
Yeah.
You are delineating and distinguishing between the status of those who realize that they are Moors and those who do not. Those who accept the status of Negro, colored, black, what have you, African American.
Which is artificial.
I'm not making that point right now. We can make that point, but I'm not making that point right now. The point I'm making is that you are substantiating that there was a differentiation between people who looked exactly alike, but those who knew who they were and those who did not.
Exactly.
Right?
Because that's what's before the
my point, the earlier point was that in Al-Andalus, no, it's necessary to do this.
Okay.
In Al-Andalus, right, that the Spanish-speaking people made that same distinction between those who were Muslims, Moors, and those who were not.
Morenos and Moranos.
Morenos and
Negros. Morenos, Moranos is generally referring to the Asiatic Africans who were Muslim that was converted to Christianity, and the others, Moranos, were Ibri, or what you call Hebrew, or Jews that was converted to Christianity, yet they were both Asiatic African people, means the same people. And when you're dealing with the Moors and in their ventures into Europe, etc., they were both Muslims and Jews. They weren't, the concept is that they were just Muslims. This was usually perpetrated in history. They were Muslims and Ibri, or what you call Jews. And as a matter of fact, when you deal with the philosophy and the culture, Muslim children and Jews live together. And even the original Christos, or what you deal with the so-called Christians that were Orthodox, that dealt with the principles of Hero, or what you call Hindustan. Because all of the philosophies are rooted in one principle, Kabbalistic principle. What you see when the secularisms take place, you'll see them, even whether Islam, Christianity, Jew, have all these divisions, when all of those philosophies can be traced to a common origin. And all scholars know this. But what I'm projecting here, and my argument here, is not really an argument. What I'm presenting is trying to demonstrate, meaning the reason I even do what I do, Sonetta, is that I'm not interested in this continued my club, your club, my wiener is bigger than yours. I'm interested in remedy. I'm interested in our people being able to travel up and down the street.
Yeah, that's right.
You understand? Getting this European off them back. When you you being a businessman with IRS or somebody coming at you trying to take your stuff. This is what I'm interested in. And I got evidence of remedy. I'm not interested in debating opinions, because most of what we debate when we debate are opinions and biases that we have both against ourselves and others, even though we don't like to admit that we got a bunch of biases. I'm interested in remedy. As an example like this, if I bring remedy, like our people always profiled, right? They have a bunch of people marching around or raising finance or for, get some European people claiming to be Jews or not Jews, the so-called represent us in court and stuff like this. So I'm interested in stuff like this that bring remedy. You understand? But I also know that in court, as you can see, the status, this is what happens in court. And this is not opinion, this is what happens in court. When you walk into a court under those brands, right, that our people don't know brands, automatically the Black Codes and the Negro Act are automatically come in. Because when you confess to that status, that's what the status covers. You understand? This is why you see the argument when they're saying anything that may be brought amenable to be brought to trial, that they be coming under the laws that any other citizen would be, which is constitutions and treaties. That's all over the world. Why our people keep wanting to be outside of that for some Negro stuff, they have a right to do that. But that is a status that makes them slaves, because they keep agreeing to it. You understand? So as an example here, the right to travel, the right to mode of conveyance, the rights of locomotion are all absolute rights. And the police cannot make void the exercise of those rights. That's law. That's remedy. And so this is remedy. But I also know that you must be in propria persona, because even though they'll let you slide sometimes, they will challenge that, because your status is everything. Even with your estate, even with inheritances. As an example, you see people always arguing about the birth certificate, right?
Right.
Well, yeah, they hypothecated the birth certificate under the Treaty of Verona. Then they should know that too, if they're going to talk about the birth certificate. And then they say that your mother sold you, blah, blah. You know it's BS because she was incompetent. Meaning that you can't take a person who's a minority, which in law is the same classification as a minor, which means they're incompetent, and sign a contract and be held to that, when it's a bottomry instrument. And not only that, nobody told them that that instrument was transferred to the popes of Rome under the IMF through the IRS and not the United States government, and that marriage certificates are delivered to the Department of Commerce under the Department of Orphans, which makes the issues from the wombs of women non-descendable, which means you can't get an inheritance.
What about through child support? How they
That's the same, because they're doing it. They're doing it.
All set up.
They're doing it under the bottomry instruments of the birth certificate and the marriage certificate. The birth certificate is used by legal process. I didn't say lawful. Legal process and chicanery to claim the present bodies. The present physical bodies. The marriage certificate hypothecates the eggs in the womb. Do you understand? The marriage certificate is used to hypothecate the womb. It is mainly that instrument that they use to kick your door down 2 o'clock in the morning and take them babies that ain't yours, that you think is yours, and they're called what? Wards of the state, aren't they? Aren't they referred to wards of the state? So what is the state? It's a private foreign corporation that's occupying a land that's not theirs, distinguished from the land. That means the children that they're claiming are non-descendable. And so what do? They put a ransom on it, don't they? And that ransom is refuted by Part 1, Article 5 of international law, that they have no right to take the children from the home or claim, because essentially it's claiming jurisdiction, right, under any pretext, right? Now, Obama signed that, and that's what we taught. How come these black leaders don't never talk that? They want to talk about whether he can be president or not. You know, stupid stuff. Or whether he had a birth certificate or not, instead of talking remedy. And they'll start all kind of organizations and go around talking trash, and they ain't got to remedy the first about nothing. That's why we have little credibility, even with the rest of the civilized world. Because we're always looking to battle each other rather than bring in remedy. You know, and this is back to even principles. Our people go into ancient Kemet, break it all down, break down Ma'at, and then break down a constitution. Do you understand? You got no remedy, nothing to fix nothing, but to prove how different we are with each other. We're full of crap. And this is why the rest of the world don't respect us, even brothers from Africa. And you'll see them coming, they don't sit around talking about African. They'll deal with their nationality, all of them. And most times they know we're sensitive. That's why they won't show us their papers, because their papers will have one white man. And then first thing we said, oh, you racist. You're trying to act like that white man. You're against your own brother. You don't want to live in your own black neighborhood. You know, and that's how we roll. They want to fight and all that old stuff. That's why they don't talk to us. They'll set up shop and get a thick piece of plexiglass because they know we do the animal stuff. 1 minute we act like human beings, the next minute we killing our own babies, killing each other, we're stepping on our shoes. But the European could come in our neighborhood, beat us all down, IRS come take your stuff, close your store up, steal your stuff, jump on you on the avenue, talking about where's your license and all stuff, and we get all humble and everything, come with a brother. We want to talk about history, connect and everything, don't know crap about crap, can't fix crap. I say this, Sonetta, if they can't bring remedy, I ain't got time for it.
That's right. Powerful, powerful, brother.
I agree with you. However,
bring remedy.
I agree with you. However, I can't let you push those Africans off on us.
No, I'm not pushing.
No, wait, time out.
No.
Let me state what I'm stating.
I'm not trying to push them off.
Let me state what I'm stating. I didn't interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Right? They act the way they act because they're savages, right? And there's no time for mention terms, right? Some of us
Africans.
Some of us act the way we act because we're savages. And I don't mean that in a nice way. I mean that in an actual way. And what is a savage? Someone who will kill you and take what you got just because they want it. Don't care about you. Look just like you. Kill you and take what you got, your cell phone. I need one of those. I seen that on TV last night. And kill you for it. That's a savage. Okay? And this is a legacy that comes from the continent of Africa. This is the legacy of tribalism. This is just tribalism after it's been eradicated from your conscious mind. But it's still in the DNA. So when I see somebody that looks like me, where you from? What tribe you from? Instead of the tribe now, it's the city, it's the borough, it's the projects, it's the block. You're not from my block. That's tribalism. Okay, that's just in its last stages when it's not like conscious. But that's what it is. And this is something that was deliberately done to us. They broke it down for their purposes.
Yeah.
But
social engineering.
How it affects us to this day is on us. And it's a part of this American system, right? because everything here is for sale. And everything you set up here can be a business. And the business model means you need customers, or you need somebody to do business on. Not do business with, but do business on. I'm going to buy this cheap and sell it to you for a little more and take what's left, my re-up. You understand? It's business. And everything here is like that. The social organizations, the political organizations, everything here is a business. The charitable organizations are businesses, yes, because the people who work there get paid from the donations. They don't make anything, so they don't produce anything. They don't produce anything, so all the money that they take in comes from donations. So how can they have salaries? Salaried employees.
Let me ask you, what is your nationality, Professor? What is your nationality?
You know, Brother Larry's a descendant of kidnapped victims, right? And because I can't identify where my ancestors were kidnapped from, I don't claim nationality.
Now, in law, now this is what I want you to research, because we're all dealing with knowledge, right?
Right.
That admission, he would be listed as a stateless person and would come under the Negro Acts.
Well,
No, we're not talking. Let's not talking opinions.
That's
No,
opinion,
that's not my. I'm not telling you that you're wrong.
No.
What I need you to understand, though, brother, is that you are telling me what someone else's opinion of me would be.
No. Yeah, well, true. But let's talk about. We're talking international law, and stop just putting it on the European. If you understand, this is anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. Without this is now. Let's talk some facts. Why did President Obama sign the rights of indigenous people when he came back from Egypt, which is called Egypt? And why did Bush Senior and Junior would not sign it? Why did Clinton not sign it? Why did all the European presidents would not sign the rights of indigenous people, even though the United States Corporation is a party to the United Nations, and it has already been declared by the nations of the earth? It's documented. The Organization of American States, and we talk about Pennsylvania, New York, we talk about Organization of Moroccan States. That's descendants of Moroccans in the Western Hemisphere, Americans. That includes Brazil, Argentina, all the way down to Chile, all of the islands, all of the people, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, different nations on that side of Africa signed it. And that is the right of these people here not to be interfered with or hindered from declaring their nationality, as it is a necessary component in world government, not just here, because it determines the legal status of the being in society. Are we clear? Now, one of the problems it's a monster problem that deals with our people is that without a nationality, we're considered what you call all over the world, not just what the European considers. This is anywhere. You can go in any African country, any Asian country, anywhere on the planet. Without a nationality, you're declared a stateless person. And a stateless person, only thing that's afforded to them in any society, not Europeans, in any society, are privileges and programs. Demonstrated even by the 14th Amendment for so-called Negroes that keep on buying and selling with European names. They can't even vote with their names unless the president backs up the Senate that signs every second administration or so for them to even vote with them names that are not theirs. Because they're listed as wards of the state, stateless persons, constitutional or psychopathic inferiority. They are outside of the human family. Now, so programs only apply to such persons. What people think about us, yes, we can argue one way or another because we know they have different opinions. But what we're talking about, what we're claiming, and what we're demonstrating is not mere opinion. This is called legal status all around the world. And this is important to consider. This is important to consider, Sonetta. We can go deep into all these philosophies and then come back down to the basic aggregate that you just asked, what's your nationality? And we go, and you know what that's took? Wait a minute, let me respectfully, it's not a criticism. Right. We've got to be objective. To the world, we declare it as incompetent. And we become automatically, by our own position, wards of the state. I wouldn't care if you say or I say, do you understand, that we're Asiatic or African. In law, in order to be protected by national and international law, you must declare a nationality. If you're Zimbabwean, then say it. If you say Kemet, but your that's not the name of the nation, Egypt, you say it. And your documents better back up, because if it doesn't, you're declared a stateless person. That's not opinion. That's fact.
That is fact, brother.
This is also.
No, listen.
This is
fact.
This is also
if
fact.
you don't know who you are,
this is
your
also.
nationality.
First of all, I know who I am. Right?
No, I'm talking about your nationality.
First of all, nationality means nation of origin. That's all it means, right? That's all it means, right?
No, it's not how it operates in society.
No, I'm not talking about how something operates. I'm talking about what something means. What it means is nation of origin, right? What it refers to is this navel, the nationality, where you came from.
Yes.
I know where I came from. What I'm trying to say is this, though, right? When you talking law, you talking codified opinion. That's all the law is.
Yes, you talking
it's
jurisprudence.
codified opinions. So whether the opinion
now, is that to dismiss it?
No, that's not to dismiss it. That's to clarify whether the opinion is the opinion of a legislative body, duly elected by members of a society, or whether the opinion is of an individual that doesn't recognize that duly elected body.
Yes.
Right? It's still an opinion, right? What we're dealing with is
opinions.
Entities that people construct.
Opinions. And even the conversation is opinions.
Exactly. But they're entities that people construct. Once people construct entities and leave a record,
yes,
now it comes away from opinion and becomes facts based on the record.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
A fact based on the record.
Which is most of what we've been talking about all night. When we talk about the history of Kemet,
I'm not disputing
Greece,
that. Well,
in other words, everything we're talking is opinion on the record. So the issue is before the issue, and this is what I'm presenting, because what happens is it gets into circular arguments that produce absolutely nothing, other than saying, well, let me dismiss this record and then use this other record to dismiss this record because it's really all opinion. And so my issue is, what opinions, since we don't want to recognize the record, what opinions do you have that you can present that bring some remedy to our
Actually, I'm a here and now person. Right?
Here and now.
I deal with it, and I can write law. Right? I've written law.
Good.
I've gone to court.
Yes.
To federal court and state court.
Yes.
Right? I write briefs.
Yes.
I know law.
Yes.
Right? I know legalese. I know how to talk like a
Yes.
lawyer. Right? What I'm saying to you, brother, is that my issue is what's going on outside this window.
That's right. That's why
when you and I leave here, right?
Yeah.
If some little brothers from across the street decide that that's a nice hat and want to take it from you, I'm talking about the thought process that produces that action.
The black codes mentality. Yeah, I agree.
And that's where I'm coming from.
So I am too. So I'm saying this is what I'm looking at. You know, I'm not looking at just attacking the brother across the street. I'm not even looking at that. No, but listen, because if they come at you, they're attacking you. And so you got to defend yourself, you're attacking them. What I'm saying is that mentality comes from the black codes being perpetrated on our people for generations. Comes from these European colonists who've been occupying our land. That's number one. Now, and so we got to teach them both philosophy, and for the most part, they think that way because they're disconnected. They're suffering psychologically, and I know that you agree with me because it's true. It's called, in social engineering, it's called disassociation. We know that that's what they're suffering from. Right? Now, the deal of it is, you know and I know that we'll start talking racism, not in general, you know what I mean, but not coming with cure. Most